Starting the stream, starting the stream. Dibby 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 doo, we're starting the stream. If you're tuning in, I know that there are people who tune into this thing after I've already filmed it, so I'm trying to make my opening really like, welcome to the stream, welcome to the stream. Dibby 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 dibby, welcome to the stream. Been thinking about putting like a little musical interlude at the beginning of this thing, but I am a musical interlude. I'm a musical interlude all to my own, and I'm just realizing that I forgot to edit the name of the title, so you're gonna watch me do it behind the scenes. Oh, we're revealing everything. This is gonna be called Capitalism Has No Soul, because that's my mood today. What's the date today? It is Friday, June 4th. Oh my goodness. I can do it. I did it. I did it! Thank you for tolerating me doing that kind of nonsense stuff at the beginning of the stream, stuff I should have done at the beginning before I even hit the record button. Well, what are you gonna do? And we got some Homer Simpson here to greet you. How it feels like in Ontario. Everyone's having fun but me. Yeah. Like, this is what you get when you elect a total boob, right? Like when you just elect a total dummy who's gonna listen to like kids named Arthur instead of their medical professionals, right? And we're still gonna be dealing with this. Like this idea that it's gonna go down. We had a little dip down and everybody was like, oh, and it went like below 700. We were like 600 cases and people were like, let's reopen, oh my God, it's so exciting. And now we're back up like just under 1,000. So it's just like, don't elect morons, right? Like, don't elect obvious grifters and conmen and thieves and drug dealers. Just don't elect them. Like, I don't really understand how it's so difficult. Like, why is this something that I even need to say out loud? But it is something that I need to say out loud, apparently. Don't elect idiots that, like, and it was easy. Like, for this one, this Doug Ford one was easy, right? Like, literally, Doug Ford is a drug dealer, right? Already, in my view, that should eliminate him. His brother was elected the mayor of Toronto and was, like, literally confessed to being a crack smoker, right? Like, we know that Doug Ford has beaten his wife, right? Like, the red flags were there, is all I'm trying to say. But at the same time, I'm like super forgiving, because I've been in situations where there have been red flags all over the situation, and I kept moving forward, and I had my own reasons for moving forward on it, and then when it all blew up, everybody was like, didn't you see that coming? And I was like, I kind of did. Yeah, I kind of did. And you eat crow afterwards. And honestly, I just feel like that's what it is here in Ontario. So, like, and the thing that's concerning to me about Doug Ford at the moment is, like, there are people who still support him. Like, that's the thing that's baffling, right? Like if somebody said to me, I voted for Ford in the last election, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I understand, right? Everybody makes mistakes, right? Everybody has their own reasons for doing stuff and all that kind of stuff, so great, right? But if somebody told me that they were going to vote for it in the next election, I would say to their face, you are a scumbag. Like, you're a worthless, filthy scumbag. Don't vote. Go the fuck away. And that would be my general position and general opinion. Just going to check the health of the stream. All right. Okay, cool. Just making sure that it's, yeah, video resolution. Okay. I know that there's one person in here. I hope it's not me. I hope that it's not picking up that it's me that's doing it. That would be so sad. Oh, well. This is a video game reference. If anyone's ever played Hades, you're going to understand this. Also a very beautiful picture. I'm a big fan of, like, stopping on the beauty anytime it pops up on my feed. Just, like, stop and pop and all that. I don't know if I'm going to get that many viewers today. It's a beautiful Friday evening. So I suspect most people are probably living their life on a patio somewhere, having a nice drink with their friends. But I know all of you are going to listen to this afterwards, right? You're all going to listen to this afterwards and be like, wow, John, you're so pretty and beautiful and smart. I'm having a good day today. Toronto libraries opening access to public computers and washrooms. So, this is actually a bigger deal than I think people seem to realize. Anytime I go out anywhere now, like, where do you use the washroom? Where do you even go in to, like, use the washroom? And, like, public computers, like, for this whole period of time, like, where have we been going to like, I don't have a printer. Where do I go to print resumes? Like, where do I go to do any of this stuff? Where do I go to eat? Like, if I'm one of these poor people living in one of the tent cities, like, conservatives will be like, these guys just need to go get a job. Well, okay, they obviously don't have a computer or internet access or anything. Like, how do they print off a resume? Where do they even go to, like, get into a website? Any of that kind of stuff. Oh, they can't? Oh, too bad? So this is actually a really big deal. Like, it's a really, really big deal. Like, people who are homeless, people who are living in poverty, people with disabilities, right? Huge sections of our society who we have completely rendered invisible. Hey, Lonnie, how you doing today? Congratulations, Lonnie. You're the first person here today. Dun, 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 dun. Just talking about how the Toronto libraries are opening access to public computers and washrooms, and how big a deal that actually is, and how important that actually is. Like, these people who are living in the tent cities, like, they don't have access to the internet. They don't have computers. They don't have this kind of stuff, right? And, like, a conservative driving by and being like, just go get a job, you lazy bums, right? It's like, how stupid do you have to be if you're saying that to a group of people who are, like, living in tents during a period of time where, like, where are they even going to use the washroom? Like, these people who are living in these tent cities, where are they going to hi, Osidian, thanks for popping in. Glad to see you. What are you? Socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. It is the sole virtue, is the equality of misery. I think you've watched too much capitalist propaganda, bud. Like, really, I will gladly have a rational conversation with you about the nature of socialism. But, I mean, everything you've said here is, like, laughably incorrect. Like, Canada itself has erected social policies and socialist systems that have been a resounding success. The idea that a capitalist system functions, like, capitalists do no work. They offer nothing to the society. They take the work of other people in the wage slave society, and they put it into their own bank accounts, right? Like, capitalism isn't successful. It just has this veneer of success for a small group of people within its structure because, like, white culture is the beneficiary of a system of overt theft. Like, I mean, you are defending a system that is currently in 7 wars, committing at least 2 genocides, and is actively harvesting resources from those places and jamming them into their own societies. So yeah, of course, capitalists and people who are closed-minded and narrow-viewed can think that capitalism is successful, but once you actually pull the thread of, like, where's all the resources coming from, where's everything coming from, you see pretty quickly that it's coming from mass genocide and war, right? Like, it's not a successful system. And then you actually take a look at, like, the societies, the socialist societies that you seem to think are the philosophies of failure, and their economies are stronger than capitalist societies. Belarus is a great example of this. Belarus's economy is far and away doing much, much better than anybody else on the continent. And they literally just continued the policies of Soviet-era communism, right? That's all they did. They just took a look at the neoliberal idea and went in and were just like, oh, no, that we're not interested in neoliberal capitalism. We're not going to move forward in that. And they just carried on with the policies of communist Soviet Russia. and their economy is doing much better than everybody else's on the continent. So I literally don't know what you're talking about. I suspect you've left by now, honestly. People like you, I get this all the time. People pop in, they say this kind of stuff because they've seen, like, CIA propaganda, and they've just swallowed it whole. And it's like people who saw reefer madness and now think marijuana is the devil's weed, right? It's like I don't take it seriously, and these sort of statements collapse the minute you do any investigation whatsoever. This is a great one. The residential schools break my heart. So you'll stop fighting survivors in court, right? You'll stop fighting survivors, right? Yeah. There's a big reason why, and I just made a video about this. My short videos that I make daily. Justin Trudeau's father is deeply entrenched in the 60s scoop. He has to be, right? He was the Minister of Justice. He was one of the Ministers of Justice. Let me be really clear. Like, he wasn't like the Minister of Justice, but he was one of the Ministers of Justice during the 60s scoop. And then he became the Prime Minister as the 60s scoop was still going on. So, like, there's absolutely no way that Pierre Elliott Trudeau does not know that the 60s scoop was going on. There's absolutely no way. And so, like, at best, Justin Trudeau, and that's Justin Trudeau's father, right? So there's, like, I keep asking myself, like, why is Justin Trudeau working so hard to fight these survivors in court, right? And it's because he wants to protect his father's lineage. That's it. He's protecting his own father's legacy. And if we genuinely wanted to learn more and do, like, an investigation on the residential school system, we need to get rid of Justin Trudeau. Like, we have to. Because, like, he's never going to do anything to tarnish his own father's legacy. And it's kind of understanding. It's kind of understandable that be the case, right? Hi, Heidelman. I haven't seen you on one of the live streams in a while. Good to see you, bud. Good to see you. I wouldn't worry so much about Obsidian. I suspect he popped in, dropped the quote, and left. That's usually what these guys do. They're not actually interested in talking or learning anything, really. That's typically my experience. And if that's not the case, Obsidian, I will gladly have a conversation with you, bud. Lithuanian regime led by Conservative Party aims to increase electricity prices up to 8% and gas prices, common form of heating, up 50% despite the pandemic. Oh, okay. Poor Lithuania. UN Food Systems Summit, dismantling democracy and resetting corporate control of food systems. Ugh. Yeah, that's what's terrifying, right? Like, Bill Gates is buying up a ton of farmland right now. He's the largest farmer in North America currently. The agrarian agriculturalist farmer Bill Gates. What he's well known for. And it's 100% that he's just buying up the food supply so that he can, be a parasite on the side of the food distribution network. That's like a major goal of the capitalist class. That's why they're going to work really hard here in Canada to privatize the water system. Like, privatize food, privatize water. It means that you have, like, people have to subserviate themselves to you. They have to, right? And so, and that kind of thing's only going to get worse. Like, it's only going to get worse because we're so clueless about it. We're so clueless about the fact that these capitalists are taking over our food distribution networks. And already have. Like, who is Galen Weston, right? And who are the Westons? They're just people who have inserted themselves into the food distribution network. They don't do anything. They're not worth anything. They provide no value. And in fact, they take a lot of value away. And all they've done is wedge themselves in between farmers, people who are actually producing the food, and the citizens who need the food, right? That's all they've done. So I'm generally of the opinion that we should nationalize these big, like, No Frills, all these places. Like, the idea that these are not owned by the people themselves is a bit odd to me. If you feel personally attacked when schools cover America's barbaric and racist history, you might be a KKK relic from the dark past. Yeah. Like, yeah. Like, if you're fighting against the simple teaching of the Ku Klux Klan in your schools, you're probably a Nazi. Like, how it feels listening to Dr. Williams in the media. Stop trying to make the fourth wave happen. It's not going to happen. It's probably going to happen. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it probably will. It's just a matter of when. That's all. It's just a matter of when. What gets a bad reputation but isn't actually bad? China. Yeah. Yesterday I did like a big thing about China and Hong Kong. Spent a lot of time talking about Hong Kong and China, and really I've landed on that like I generally think that China is doing okay on the world stage. Like, I think that generally speaking they treat their citizens they're trying to improve the situation for themselves. But like, what they're doing in Hong Kong is obviously a strategic mistake. Like, they're obviously making a mistake that they really, really need to slow their roll, let the citizenry actually elect their own representatives, negotiate with the people that they represent, that they elect. And like, if Hong Kong declares its independence ultimately, like, I just think China needs to deal with that, and it needs to just, like, what it's doing right now, where it's trying to suppress the people's will and the democratic vote in Hong Kong, and it obviously is doing that. Like, I don't think you can argue otherwise. It's going to fail. Like, that's the thing to me, is that it's going to fail. And it's just going to become a talking point for Westerners to pretend as though the whole communist project fails because of Hong Kong. Like, Hong Kong is a population of 7 million people in a federated country of like 1 billion people. So that's obviously false. But like, China's just not making the right decisions in terms of how it's interacting with Hong Kong. And it really, really needs to take more seriously that, like, hey, you've got millions of people protesting in the streets. You're probably on the wrong side of it. Like, you're probably on the wrong side of it. The people are usually right. Comrades, today is our day. Our belief in the communist cause will be shaken to its roots. Shaking my head. Oh, yeah. Anyway. Jen Zedong, I'm subscribed to it, but one of my Patreons really recommended I get involved in it. But a lot of the times their memes are sort of weird, and you have to kind of decipher them. I think it's because I'm a millennial, and Gen Z is its own culture and its own thing. I'm getting old, you guys. I'm getting old. I'm turning into an old man, and soon I'll be like in my 60s, and the 20-somethings will be posting memes and stuff, and I'll look at them, and they'll be completely indecipherable to me. It'll be like a hieroglyphic language. I'll literally need to have like a young person beside me on the live stream, being like, "This is what this means," and then I'll be like, "Oh." Sudbury letter. Canada needs a universal basic income. Yeah. Like, yeah, who's actually written this letter, I wonder? This is from the Sudbury Star. Oh. Sudbury Star, not loading. Let's let that load. I can go back to that. No, you didn't. Yeah. Yeah. Lonnie, I'm right there with you, man. Like, sometimes you see these abbreviated things and you're just like, and like, don't worry, we're in it together. Like, I still encounter a bunch of things like this, right? Like, where I'm just like, and shaking my head. That's one of those ones when I first encounter it, I had to do like a Google search. I had to. So I really respect that position. Yep, Europe celebrating neo-Nazis' birthdays as usual. Yeah, pretty typical. Pretty typical. Lush prides itself on a progressive image, but the company's union busting in Toronto tells another story. ethical brand Lush Cosmetic is actually a terrible place to work. Of course it is. It's a capitalist institution. Like, is there a capitalist institution that's worth, like, I think the best place I've ever worked was a toy store that, when I started working there, it was still family owned, right? So they're still capitalists, but the family like directly owned the company, and there weren't that many stores, right? And I actually was there as the company grew and became a national chain, and the owners, the original owners, sold the business to like an investment company, right? And so I was there from the transition to like a family-run capitalist organization to a corporate-run, and instantly it went from being like a group of people who were genuinely interested in toys and like how do we get toys and all this kind of stuff to literally sociopaths, just like rapacious, repugnant, dingy, dirty sociopaths who like obviously didn't give a fuck about anything. That like they if suddenly it was in vogue to like hang black people publicly, they would sell toys that did that, and they would just be completely fine with that because they're just rapacious sociopaths. And like the corporate structure itself rewards that kind of behavior, and it's obvious to see, and it doesn't surprise me even a tiny little bit. Lush, yeah, of course. Like if these guys can enslave a populace and make a buck doing it and plunge wages down to zero, they'll absolutely do it. That's capitalism, baby. That's how it works. Okay. I told my dad. Someone asked me if I have a religion. Okay, I don't care this much. China. Are you two best friends? Anti-China leftists. No. U.S. State Department. Yes. That's kind of how I look at it, right? Like of course anti-China leftists are not fans of the U.S. State Department, but the State Department loves anti-China leftists. Like, they're more than happy to support people who are leftists who are against China, instead of taking a more nuanced approach to China. Okay, Sudbury Star is not doing its thing. The U.S. says elections in Syria, China, Cuba, Russia, and Venezuela are illegitimate. But elections in the U.S., which are bought and paid for by the biggest corporations, are perfectly legitimate. Yeah, like, there just comes a point where, like, if you are saying that literally every other democratic election that's happening is illegitimate except yours, like, do you think that maybe you're full of shit? Do you think maybe that you're saying these things specifically to maintain your power on the world stage? Hey, Demand Better, how you doing? Glad to see you, bud. Whereas capitalism is the maximization of profit through manipulation of misery, through unemployment, poverty, unlivable wages, colonizations, etc. Oh, we're still commenting on this Obsidian guy? He's gone, man. Like, he's not going to see that. This happens all the time on this channel. Guys like this pop in, they say one thing, and they leave, and they think they're like, yeah, I got it. Slam dunk. Told them. Things adults shouldn't believe anymore. Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy. Yeah, Justin Trudeau. Yeah. At this stage, like, I don't understand people who vote liberal at this stage in the game. Again, it's exactly what I said at the start of the stream. Like, I understand why people voted for Doug Ford in the last election. Like, I get that. And if somebody told me that they voted for Doug Ford in the last election, I would be like, oh yeah, okay, I understand. But if somebody told me that they were voting for Doug Ford in the upcoming election, I would think that they are a terrible person. Like, straight up. There's no justification whatsoever. Like, you might as well tell me that you are pro-Nazi voting for Doug Ford in the next election. And this is where I'm getting with Justin Trudeau, right? Like, why are you voting for this guy? I would actually, like, if somebody told me that they were voting conservative federally in the next election, I would be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But I wouldn't, like, think they're a terrible person. I can see the path for someone voting conservative and thinking they're doing the right thing, even though I disagree. But now with Justin Trudeau, I'm just like, nah. There's literally no reason to vote for this guy anymore. Like, and if you're voting for him in the next election, I'm like, what are you, stupid? Like, I just think that you're either dumb or evil, right? Like, who supports this guy? A political turning point for reconciliation in Canada? I mean, we will never have any kind of genuine truth and reconciliation while we vote for the son of one of the men who were in power during the 60s scoop, right? Pierre Elliott Trudeau was in power during the 60s scoop. He knew about it. He had to have. He was the Minister of Justice, for Christ's sakes. He had to have known about it. There's absolutely no way that Justin Trudeau is ever going to launch any kind of investigation against his own father. He's never going to do that. And so as long as he's in power, as long as he's the one that are holding the keys to this idea that we need to do a full-scale investigation, it's never going to happen. And for goodness sakes, like, he spent like $100 million fighting survivors of these residential schools, explicitly for this reason. He doesn't want his father's legacy tarnished. So he spent $100 million, and then he'll throw like $2 million saying like, oh sure, this place, explore, try to find another one of these places. But we're never going to release any documents. We're never going to connect the Canadian government to any of this in any tangible way. So we need to get rid of this guy. And honestly, I think that getting rid of Justin Trudeau at this point is like a national imperative. Like, this residential school stuff is absolutely crucial for us as a culture to investigate. We absolutely have to do it. Like, it's a must. It to me, it's like for sure in the top 3. Like, if we're not moving forward with this, then we're just allowing this sort of festering existential boil to bubble underneath the surface of our culture. And it just keeps coming out in different ways. And we need to face it head on. We need to face it directly, and we're never going to be able to do that as long as Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister. Like, it's just not going to happen. Luna Oi, a great ML YouTuber, just made a video that shows how Vietnamese democracy works, even filming town hall meetings with government criticism. Yeah, like, most places have some kind of democratic structure, because one of the big benefits of democratic structures is that you don't have to fight a war every single time you want to transfer power, right? That, like, the peaceful transfer of power is absolutely crucial to any kind of complex modern society. Like, you literally cannot live in a modern society, because what happens, right? What happens if you didn't have some kind of democratic structure, or some kind of way for the citizenry, for the people themselves to actually interact in the government and actually impact the government in meaningful ways? Well, that means you can never have nice stuff, because what'll always happen is the populace will eventually riot and revolt, right? The power structure will use its wealth and prestige and power to create a police state and a police force, and these two forces will fight and blow everything up. So you can't have nice stuff. All of your infrastructure will be destroyed every single time you want to transition power or get anything done. So yeah, of course Vietnam has, and of course all of these places, like Syria, all of these places, anytime the United States stands up and says, these elections are illegitimate, it's total bullshit every single time. Like, and like, is there, who is actually walking, or like, who is having these, like, and anyway. And Vietnam, like, I mean, what's happened in Vietnam is like a miracle, right? Like, these guys got blown up. Like, the Vietnamese got blown up. I've been thinking about doing it this whole time, so I'm just going to do it. Google Maps. Any excuse to open Google Maps. Any excuse. Don't need a reason. I like maps and I like looking at maps. Like, the Vietnam War happened not very long ago at all, right? Like, the Vietnam War is recent. And they blew this place up. This place got blown up. It reduced to absolute rubble. And the idea that they're now Vietnam is actually like a stable society with a good democratic government, and the idea that it's able to even have like infrastructure after being like leveled to the ground, and is a miracle. Like, what's happened in Vietnam is a miracle, and it's 100% because like all these Vietnamese got together after the capitalists left. And they looked at one another and they said, "So communism, right?" And everybody went, "Yeah, communism seems good, right?" Especially after getting like literal, like, almost like, if you wanted to talk about it from like an existential or spiritual level, it's like a dragon showed up. It's like a demon showed up and just blew fire all over the place while shouting, "Capitalism is the greatest." And it's like, okay. So when the dragon leaves, everybody's looking around going, are we a fan of capitalism? Hey, Ward, how you doing? It's telling that our governance is based on personal embodiment of policy without policy actually existing. It's telling that our governance is based on personal embodiment of policy without policy actually existing. You're going to have to decipher that one, Ward, because I feel like there's something true there, but I'm not quite connecting the dots there. I like it, but okay. So, a political turning point for reconciliation in Canada. What? It's not really a political turning point. It's a turning point within the populace. Like, the Kamloops graves, like, we can't ignore that. We can't ignore that. Like, we can't ignore that there are 215 kids in a mass grave. Are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? No, we need to know more. We need to know more. And that's never going to happen with Justin Trudeau in charge. We're never going to know more with him in charge. It's never going to happen. Populism. I mean, modern day populism is sort of it's sort of odd, right? Like, it's like, you would think, like, I find the whole like concept of populism to be kind of odd. Like, don't we have a democracy? So shouldn't that mean that every single leader or every single elected person is a populist leader? They've been elected by a popular, like, they got the most votes, right? They are the popular one. They are populist. And I just feel like populism gets a little co-opted, and capitalists attempt to use populism as like a cudgel to like hit people they don't like, to try and denigrate politicians that they don't really like. It's telling our governance is based on personal embodiment of policy without policy actually existing. And I mean, I think I get what you're saying. Like, there are people walking around saying, like, we should have a basic income. Like, there's just an example, just a politician walking around, there should be a basic income. And then when the time comes to actually vote for a basic income, they don't, right? Like, so it's all just a facade. It's all just like a propagandistic layer of we can't actually even know who is being honest or who is not being honest, right? But the only way that we can know is when we finally give them power and they're finally put to a vote, and and we see which way they go. But we're so like deeply entrenched with them at that point that it takes forever to extract them again. That's Justin Trudeau's whole career, right? Like, here's a guy who gets in on kind of a wave of popular opinion, saying things that we all liked, and he's done fuck all. Like, he's done absolutely nothing, right? Like, what's he done? Honestly, can anybody even tell me one thing of value that he has really done? And every single time I ask that question, like, a pro-liberal person or a pro-Trudeau person will give, like, the flick out of like, oh, he's banned straws, like the smallest, tiniest little achievement possible. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, right. So we should get rid of this guy because his idea of reforming the society is little incremental nonsense bullshit, right? Forget that. We're so well beyond that. Communism works economically because the surplus profit is used for public and tech investment. Exactly. Like, capitalism fails on the face of it because you're taking systems that, like privatization, right? That's a great example, right? That's a great example because, like, you're taking a system that is working. It's already working. And then you're insisting that putting even a single person onto the side of that functioning system that does no work, adds no value, doesn't increase any of the productivity or anything, but still needs to be paid a paycheck. And even if that paycheck is low, it means that you have to lower price or raise prices or lower wages, right? And there's no other options. So the system functions worse with capitalists involved simply as a byproduct of the existence of the capitalists in the first place. Like, capitalism fails on the surface, right? Simple analysis will tell you this. And like, it's becoming clearer and clearer and clearer. And that's why China's sort of China's concession to the capitalist class and like the creation of a capitalist class is very concerning. Like, there are Chinese billionaires, and it's like, okay, so China's walking around saying it's a communist state, but there are billionaires. I encounter lots of leftists who are like, what's up with that? What's up with that? And generally my response is like, yeah, it's pretty, you gotta do what you gotta do. People elect the person who cares about policies. Yeah, exactly, Ward. It's just like, we all elected Trudeau. Honestly, we ended up electing Trudeau because he was like a pretty boy with his father's last name. That's all. That's the reason why he got elected. Because he had a decent level of charisma. He could look into the camera and have like these smoldering eyes and be like, I'm Justin Trudeau. And we were all like swoon about it, right? Like, and that's definitely the truth. There definitely was this like craze of support underneath him, based exclusively on like his looks and and that we liked that he was the guy that was going to be presenting on the world stage on behalf of Canada. We just liked that. We just liked the way he looked. But like, his policies are junk. And he's a right-wing conservative, and he's farther to the right than Stephen Harper was, right? Like, he's farther to the right than Stephen Harper. So like, he's ended up being a complete disaster for Canada. Policies are the only way to tell a politician's actual intent. That's why most politicians substitute talking details for lofty rhetoric. Yeah, of course. And like, the only way to actually know what's going on, it's like Survivor, right? I don't ever talk about this, but I'm going to start talking about this more. And boy, I got to start watching Survivor again. I stopped, but like, I love Survivor. I've watched a lot of Survivor, and one of the things that happens on that show, and people will say it over and over and over again. A vote is the only way to know what's actually happening. That there's all of this nonsense and lies, and people can say what they want to one another and make whatever deal they want to make, but the only thing that matters is the vote. And if you don't vote the right way, then you're on the outside, because it is the only way to know what's happening. And it's the same thing with politics, that the only thing that matters is the vote. You can say what you like, you can present what you like, you can put whatever propaganda you like out there, but the vote is the only thing that matters. But the populace doesn't seem to think that's the truth, right? The populace doesn't seem to put that together. We get so caught up in the propaganda, we get so caught up in the nonsense and the bullshit, that that we're just like vomiting out nonsense, crazy garbage all the time, and we trust these idiots. Like, we trust these guys even after they vote against our interests. We should make politicians commit to policies and pay a price, fines or disadvantages when they fail to deliver or alter after election. I mean, the general response to that historically has been, well, then you vote them out, right? That they come into power, they don't do what they say, then we vote them out. And that seems to be the trajectory Trudeau is on. Like, he came in with a majority. He didn't do what we asked him to do. Now he has a minority. Well, what's the next step, right? Either he swings back up to a majority because we like him, but the reality is we don't. Like, I just feel, and I hope that I hope that we come out of this pandemic period and really, like, when it comes time to actually vote, we really remember that, like, this guy's a shithead. Like, he's just a pretty shithead. And like, it's the trouble, of course, is like, how do you actually put something like that together? Like, pay a price. They're the ones that are making the rules. Like, that's the whole issue with the structure as it is. Like, you're voting for somebody to literally write the law. Right? And so if you vote them in and suddenly they're like, haha, bitches, grifted, I write the law, you know, the best that you can do is just throw your support behind somebody else who's saying, oh, well, let's... It's like when Justin Trudeau promised that he was going to do electoral reform. Well, he didn't follow through on that because he realized that, if we do electoral reform, there's even a possibility it'll hurt our chances of being reelected. Even though one could argue that actually making good on your promises will sway more people to support you. One might argue... Anyway. Evening, Chris. How you doing today, bud? Good to see you. Glad you popped in. Tips, because you know they can't survive on their own salaries. Yeah, millennials be like, terrible service. 5 stars and 20% tips so this idiot can pay their bills. Yeah, dude, the fact that we are tying anybody's wages to the idea of somebody going like 5 stars, it's so stupid. Like, it's so dumb. And like, I was listening to the Chapo guys, and they were they hit this right on the head. It's absolutely the truth. That the retail system, like the system of consumerism itself, is a way for people to have slaves and servants without feeling guilty about owning a slave or a servant. There's like a servant system that we maintain and erect and allow to exist, and it lets people feel as though they are like tiny lords, right? It allows them to be like, I am going to be a prince today. Oh, do my bidding, servant man, right? And we create these justifications for why we're allowed to be rude or dismissive or shitty to these people. When you actually step out and look at the system, you're like, oh, this is pretty horrific, generally. Like, should be done away with. And the way to do away with that is let everybody have food and shelter, right? Like, why are we withholding food and shelter as a populace? Oh, it's because there are sociopaths who own the means of production. Interesting. Okay. Like, no wonder, like, if there's big talk about aliens these days, right? Like, the Air Force and the Navy keep confirming the existence of UFOs. They're showing pictures and documents and stuff, and like the conversation turns to like, well, why are these if there are aliens, why would they even be here? Like, what are they interested in? And steadily my perception is turning to like, oh, well, like, we are a nation, like, we are a global community where there is one group who already has dropped nukes, right? Who already has dropped nukes on a population, who has this enormous air force, this enormous weapon of death machine that holds nukes over everybody's heads, that enslave their own populace through a wage slave system. Yeah, if I'm aliens and these guys are starting to fire rockets at another planet, like these guys are starting to fire rockets into space, yeah, I'm very interested. I'm very interested, if I'm aliens, that a sociopathic group of militaristic nightmare creatures on a planet are starting to enter airspace. Yeah, I want to keep very, very close eye on these guys and be like, oh, okay, are they going to pivot and stop being nightmare sociopaths? Or are we going to have to nuke this place because we're concerned that they're going to destroy us, right? Like, that's the question. If I'm an alien, like, if I'm an alien, I've got an alien civilization, I got this whole thing. Yeah, I absolutely want to be like, okay, are these guys a threat? And right now, yeah, we're a fucking threat. For sure we are, right? Like, these aliens don't want us to start colonizing them. These aliens don't want us to start landing ships on their homeworlds. These aliens don't want to... They're not going to let us get to a point, should they exist, they're not going to let us get to a point where we're a significant threat to their well-being, right? Of course they're not going to do that. And, like, every sign from the West, from the United States and the history of Europe, shows that if we were to suddenly be interacting with aliens, our first objective would be find out how many resources they have and find out how to destroy them and steal it. That's for sure our objective. That's our primary objective. And so if there's aliens in the sky looking down at us, like, they got to be asking themselves, maybe we should just eradicate this place. Like, maybe we should, you know? Yeah, maybe we should just get rid of the atmosphere, because, like, it's pretty scary. Pretty scary to think that a planet of genocidal maniacs who keep bombing themselves and keep destroying themselves are gonna get into space and start interacting with, like, other intergalactic communities. Like, pretty terrifying. I would think that aliens would be curious and constantly be asking themselves if they need to pull the plug on Earth. I think the only thing that must be keeping them going is that, like, okay, yeah, Europe went through that big conflagration, and now they seem to be, like, not so genocidal. They're still using slavery, like, but it's a more advanced form of slavery, so I can see why it would be difficult for them to kind of put two and two together about that. So, but there's evolution happening there. And then there are places like China, Russia, right, like the South America, like, they're trying to move forward more peacefully, less genocidal, like, less crazy. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe the United States will, like, blow up in on itself and actually figure something out. So we'll keep an eye on it, right? Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Well, if your messages aren't showing up, what's this message, Jeff? Huh? Maybe if you're putting links in your messages, they're not going to show up. And Lonnie, at least in Canada, people in service industry still able to make minimum wage. Yeah, in Mississippi, minimum wage for service industry is $2.13 right now. Wow. $2.13. Wow, man. Jeez Louise. $2.13. I don't know, like, why would you even go work that job? Like, that's not paying that's not paying your rent. That's not paying your bills. Like, that's not paying basic stuff. Like, why would you even go work that job? Like, if somebody said to me, hey, $2.13, that's what I'm going to pay you, I would just be like, no thanks. But the reality is that there is no other job, right? There is nothing else. So it's like, you might as well get the small amount of money you can. I guess that'll pay for, like, a room in a closet-sized room in somebody's house, maybe. Ugh, that causes me physical pain, Lonnie. Ward, I witnessed poor manners at the checkout counter. Yeah, of course. Because they've been given permission. The customer's always right? So if the customer's always right, then some Karen can just be like a total nightmare person and they're given permission to, right? That's part of the deal. That's what they want. Well, you're here now, Jeff. Good to see you. Maybe aliens are already orchestrating the American downfall. If I was an alien, dude, I would not be getting involved. I would just be watching it. I would just be watching it and be ready to pull the trigger. That would be what I would be doing if I was an alien. Just like pay attention. Maybe they'll work it out, right? Maybe they'll get to a point where they're like, oh, okay, like they're no longer sociopaths. Like maybe that'll happen, and like who knows? Like maybe they're looking at their own culture's history and being like, yeah, of course, like what's happening in the United States right now is very similar to like the Zimborg electorate, right? Like that we had that period of time 5,000 years ago, right? So hopefully they'll be able to make it through and all this kind of stuff, and because they like if aliens are real, they have to be peaceful. And we know they have to be peaceful because if they weren't peaceful, they would have already destroyed us. Like, if they want our resources, like, if that's the arrangement, and they're an alien species that has intergalactic travel, there's all kinds of ways that they could kill us. It'd be super easy to kill us if they have the technology necessary to do intergalactic flight the way that we are discussing, the way that we're thinking. Literally just, like, get rid of our atmosphere. Just straight up, boom. It would take 30 seconds. It would take no time whatsoever. So the fact that they haven't already destroyed us tells me that they are not imperialistic and that they are more interested in us in a peaceful sort of way. Because they could have already done away with us. It'd be so easy to. Master de Katz, nice to see you. Thanks for popping in. Anybody in the chat that hasn't subscribed yet, please chat. Sorry, if common question, are you a communist or a narco-communist? If the former, what do you think of anarchists? So, I'll be straight up with you, Master de Katz. I call myself the Canadian commie. I am still in the process of learning about communism. I'm still in the process of finding out more. I love to talk to everybody. I love to talk to people. I am not exclusionary, right? When it comes, like, my exclusionary barrier really does just stop at liberal. Like, if you're telling me you're like a liberal or a conservative, that's where I'll be like, okay, good, great. So we are opposed to one another, and that's very clear. But anything to the left of that, I have a real live and let live attitude. Like, I don't necessarily call myself an anarcho-communist. And honestly, every time I've had any kind of conversation at all with anarchists that seem like good people who are really trying to do good in the world, I respect. They're generally more militant than I am as in terms of their presentation and in terms of their rhetoric, which, yeah, I think that's completely fine. Because for me, really what it comes down to is not getting caught in the labels of it, but getting caught in the, or not getting caught, but talking about solutions, right? See a problem, find a solution, what works, we can discuss it, come to a consensus, come to an agreement, and my general position is that if I'm having a conversation with a group of people and I am in that minority of people who end up losing the conversation, like we all have a vote, I don't have the votes, my idea doesn't fly, or we move forward with a different idea, I'm not going to lose my mind and leave the organization and leave the project and all that kind of stuff that leftists generally tend to do. I'd much prefer moving forward with allies than alienating myself from allies because I didn't get my way on this particular issue. And that's generally how I look at it. Like I look at anarchists as allies, right? Thank you for the response. Conquest for bread. I don't know if I understand your statement, but I value you as a person. Yeah, I see lots of leftists. The whole cancel culture thing to me is a bit odd, right? Going after someone's livelihood or going after someone's ability to even speak. to me, is a bridge too far until you hit actually inciting violence, right? Once you hit incitement of actual violence, that's when I think you should be no longer allowed to speak in the conversation. So like Nazis. Like, Nazis don't have rights. You can silence them all you want because they're Nazis, right? And yeah, I hope that hits it, Master Ducats. I love talking to the chat. I love questions. I love all that kind of stuff. So please chime in. When the Tsar was killed, I danced on the street with my family because I knew that the working paradise of the Soviet Union would soon come. John Madden? Oh, let's say this like John Madden. Here's my John Madden impression. Well, when the Tsar was killed, I danced on the street with my family because I knew that the working paradise of the Soviet Union would come soon. John Madden. It's not a very good impression, I admit, but it's fun to try. Yeah, this month is the 32nd anniversary of the U.S. bombing its own population in Philadelphia. If you didn't know this is the result of the United States, I believe it was the Philadelphia police force itself, dropped a bomb on the people of Philadelphia, that the black population in Philadelphia were rioting because, obviously. And so they dropped a bomb on them, and here's the results. Hey Ruth, how you doing today? Good to see you. DJ Paradigm at the same time, you two coming in together. What's going on there? What's happening there? Right now we're talking about Philadelphia. Conquest of Bread is just a book by Peter up there with Marx. Oh, hey bud. Great. Here, Conquest of Bread. Let's learn a little bit about the Conquest of Bread. I love it. Looks like a French book. Okay. No. Probably just a French cover. Does this have anything to do with the Paris Commune? Economics, why he believes poverty is scarcity. Oh yeah, okay. So it's like it was heavily influential in the Spanish and the Occupy movement. Oh yeah, okay. Maybe this is something that I heard about during the Occupy movement. I paid a lot of attention. I wish I had have started this kind of live stream thing during the Occupy movement, I paid a lot of attention to the Occupy movement, and I just spent a lot of my time on message boards and stuff. I wish that I had really pushed in on doing this kind of stuff back during the Occupy movement. I'm going to take a look at this book. Yeah. There's probably a YouTube. Conquest of Bread. Here you go. Done. Right?
Chapter 1.
Right? This. It's as easy as this. Save. Watch later. Done. So I love audiobooks because I have ADHD, I think, and I'll put this on and play a game or something like that. I gotta twiddle my fingers or I lose my mind. Anyway, good hot link, bud. Hot link. I love it. Yeah, the Philadelphia. I think it was the Philadelphia police. Hold on. Let's dig a little deep. Let's get specific. Philadelphia bombing. Is this it? Move originally, Christian Movement for Life is a militant. No, this isn't it. Oh. Here you go. Yeah. So, in 1978, a standoff resulted in the death of one police officer and injury to 16. 9 members were convicted of killing the officer. But in 1985, another firefight ended when a police helicopter dropped 2 bombs onto the roof of the MOVE compound. The resulting fire killed 6 MOVE members and 5 of their children and destroyed 65 houses. Yeah. So Anybody wants to tell me that America is not a white supremacist police state? That happened 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago now, right? When I was poor and complained about inequality, they said I was bitter. Now that I'm rich and I complain about inequality, they say that I'm a hypocrite. I'm beginning to think they just don't want to talk about inequality. Russell Brand. You know what's fascinating about a guy like Russell Brand is that, like, he literally comes out of, like, he comes out of poverty and he comes out of a poor neighborhood, but then he goes on to do, like, a lot of kind of, like, schlock comedy, and a lot, and, like, his early stand-up is, like, very, like, schlock comedy. And now he's, like, a live streamer who has turned his entire focus away from just, like, this kind of schlocky, I need to make as much money as I can nonsense, and now he's talking about this kind of stuff. And every time I listen to him, I don't necessarily agree with him, obviously, but I mean, that's fine. But I just genuinely see a guy who's really trying to articulate really, really big ideas. And, yeah, so Russell Brand, it's something, ACAB, yeah, absolutely, bud. I don't think that you can justify being a police officer any longer. Like, I just don't think you can do it. Fascists buy sneakers, too. Me, acrylic. Why the NDP is pushing forward to slap a tax on vacant properties, real estate speculation? Because our housing market is ridiculous. Like, our housing market is insane, and it's 100% happening. The housing properties are happening because the capitalist sociopaths know that that the economy is going to blow up. They know it's going to blow up, and when it blows up, they want to have land. They're not buying that. Like, calling them speculators, I think, is wrong. It's wrong to say, because their goal is not to get the property and then sell it later. That's not what they're doing. They're buying property so that when the economy collapses and we revert to, like, neo-feudalism in an official sort of way, that they'll have tons of land, right? Because if you're in a society where the economy has completely collapsed, you need to have assets that have value. And what asset has a ton of value? Land, right? They don't care about the house. They don't care about the apartment building. They don't care about that. They care about the land. That's what they care about. Yeah, well. A balkanized America map. Oh, yeah, I see. So just like, if there wasn't, like, all of this. Oh, yeah. That's actually a really cool map. You could spend a lot of time on this map. Sioux Confederacy, Black Fleet Nation. Like, it's very difficult for me to perceive how, moving forward in the future, how the the United States federal government, how it actually maintains control and structure, right? Because, like, there does come a point where states start to genuinely ask themselves, what are we getting from this deal? Like, what are we actually getting from this federal government? What is the federal government of the United States actually doing, right? So, like, a place like California or Texas, right? We pay a whole bunch of taxes, okay? And, like, the theory is that, like, we pay a bunch of taxes to the federal government, and they're turning around and they're making a place like, let's say, Mississippi a lot better. And so you can sort of justify that in your head. You know, if you're a taxpayer, you can sort of be like, okay, well, if we're using our tax money to help the people of Mississippi, okay, great. You know, that's really nice. And you can even say, if you were like a Texan or a Californian, you could even be like, oh, my tax money is going to help, you know, the people of Sudan or the people of Libya, right? Like, well, that's nice. I can see how there's value there. But more and more and more people are starting to see that, like, oh, you're literally going over here and just destroying Iraq. Just destroying Iraq, creating a genocide in Yemen, creating a genocide in Israel, or in Palestine, overthrowing people in Egypt, destroying the country of Libya, right? and continuously enacting coups and all kinds of stuff in South America, and none of it is justified and none of it makes any sense. It's so illogical and so irrational and so ridiculous. There is going to come a point where like places like Texas and California are going to be like, I'm not going to pay taxes on that. Like, why should I continue to pay taxes for our federal government to just blow places up and like murder children and create like mass graves that they ignore, right? Forget that. And so it's very difficult for me to believe moving forward how this place doesn't just break up. And like, it makes total sense to me that California, which is the third largest economy like on the continent, why it doesn't just like break off and do its own thing. Same story with Texas. Like, you can see like, why wouldn't Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado break off and kind of create their own thing? Maybe with Nevada, right? Like that, instead of it being one federated body, you'd have like smaller federated bodies, right? Like, get these together, like Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee, right? Well, they'll get together, like this kind of stuff. Yeah, of course, California is thinking of leaving, Jeff. I would. Are you kidding me? I would. I don't see any reason whatsoever for an American citizen to pay federal taxes. Why? Why would any American pay federal taxes at this point? What is the federal government actually doing for the citizens of the United States? The answer is fucking nothing, right? Like, get out of there. Get out of there. Like, if you genuinely want to stop this shit show that the Americans are involved in, like this absolute disaster project, get out. And it's really tough for me to see how, and I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not sitting here being like, tomorrow they will break up or any of this kind of stuff. But like, in 100 years, I just don't see how there's any, like, how does the United States actually keep itself together while acting in this sort of imperial destruction system, right? Like, if this is how they're going to maintain their power, and like they eventually turn against their own citizens. I mean, I shouldn't say eventually. They've already turned against their own citizens, right? The police state is already well entrenched in America. And like, people are just going to start saying, like, why the fuck are we paying taxes to this? It seems so stupid. Because it is. And so something like this, I can see being like, not necessarily like Black Fleet Nation or Sioux Confederacy or other, because, you know, white supremacy still exists. Although there was that really major success in, was it Oklahoma? I think it was Oklahoma. Am I crazy? There was one I forget which state it was, but there was like a big, let's pretend like it was Wyoming. And like they got like this enormous chunk of the state to be returned. Oh wow, they're actually showing where the reservations are on the map now. Look at that. Look at that. That's actually really cool. Wow, when did that start happening? Look at you, Google, actually informing people of the existence of First Nations people on your map. Look at that. Oh, wow. I wonder when they... I genuinely wonder when they started to do that. That's really cool. That's really cool. Was it Oklahoma? Yes, I think it was. You can see, right? And I bet you they started to do this right when this decision happened, where they officially declared this not part of that this land is First Nations land, and so they it's no longer being administrated by the state of Oklahoma. That this land is now First Nations land, and it's gone back to the First Nations people. That's probably why Google started to do this, because they were like, well, if that's the case, I mean, we should delineate these lines, and if we're going to delineate those lines, then there's a whole bunch of reserves, right, that follow that reasoning. I wonder if they've done that throughout Canada. Doesn't look like. Which is hardly surprising, because let's not go mad. That, like, Google is an American company, right? They're an American company, so they're interested in America, and they're not gonna bother delineating these lines in Canada unless, you know, we ask them to, and somebody like Justin Trudeau is not going to do that. because he wants to protect his father's legacy, as I've been saying over and over again. Yeah, like, missionary oblates who ran genocidal Kamloops school won't release records, right? Why would they? Yeah, no, we're not going to release records that indict us voluntarily, right? They will need to be ordered to do it by either the papacy or the government itself. And neither of those institutions currently are interested in that. So that's just not going to happen. Ben Norton. Ben Norton is the Moderate Rebels. I'm super jealous of him. I wish that his channel was my channel, but such is life. Really, really beautiful work. He's doing really, really good work. And he's piercing into, like, he's getting, like, pretty high profile people. Who's the one guy that he keeps having on? Economist. Sort of speaks with a little bit of a lisp. Michael Hudson. Michael Hudson's really great, and one of these economists who, from the for a long time, has been calling the United States financial system a parasite, and talks about it as a parasite because it is a parasite. It's overtly a parasite. Like, it doesn't pretend, like, it pretends like it isn't to people who don't pay attention, but when you actually, like, read their own documentation, they're pretty upfront about how, like, why else would they use language like the real economy? You ever wonder this? You're listening to somebody talking and they start talking about the real economy. Well, if there's a real economy, that implies the existence of a fake economy. And what would a fake economy be? Well, the United States financial system, right? It's completely false. Like, the stock market is not real. It's just, like, shuffling papers around, right? If you, like, do some, like, currency trading, you haven't done anything, you haven't created anything, but boy, do you make a lot of money doing it. So it's a total false economy, it's totally fake, and it's destined to collapse, and the capitalists are aware of that, and so they're buying up all the land. When the USA threatens a country with a leftist government that it must have a free and fair election, what they really mean is that the U.S. has a gun to that nation's collective heads and said either the right-wing candidate we funded and trained wins, or we keep waging war on you. Yeah, that's a truth bomb right there. Like, save this screenshot, because that's, like, the truest thing that's ever been said about this statement, free and fair election, right? And Ben is doing a great job here because he's recognizing that the statement free and fair election is itself a slogan, right? And American propagandists are extremely, extremely, extremely good at this. Capitalists are not good at anything except propaganda. And one of the core attributes of propaganda is slogans, right? That slogans, like catchy or natural slogans, something like free and fair election, right? You see that and you think to yourself, like, yeah, everybody wants to have a free and fair election, but Ben is doing a great job here taking this slogan, free and fair election, that seems innocuous on the face of it, and he's doing a great job of interpreting that slogan, right? And showing you, like, why it's a slogan, why it exists as a slogan, what it's achieving, right? Like, it's like the support our troops narrative, right? Support our troops was one of those really great slogans that got embedded in the culture. Because if you were critical of the Iraq War, it meant you weren't supporting the troops. And it works, as all of these slogans do, which is to completely deflect from the actual conversation at hand, right? If you're talking about supporting the troops and whether or not you support the troops, you're not actually talking about the war, and it's like strategic endeavors. Much in the same way, if you're talking about free and fair elections and whether or not the country is actually having free and fair elections, then you're not actually talking about what's actually happening in that region, right? Or the United States actions in that region, right? Focus on what the country is doing, right? Focus on the country, like, say, Venezuela, right? Focus on that, and focus on the accusation that's being laid. Force leftists to spend all of their time saying the election is free and fair, right? Because implied in the statement, oh, you have to have a free and fair election, is that they're not. And it forces leftists to, instead of focus on what's happening in the region and the United States' actions on the region, it forces them to defend the idea that the election's already free and fair, right? And it's done so, literally, it's 4 words, and we have to defend it and spend our time and thrust it over. Ben Norton does a really great job of it right here. So kudos to you, Ben. Yeah, I don't understand this, so that's fine. You're gonna find out a lot. I come on to Jen Zedong, and I look at it and I'm like, I don't know if I understand this. So, and a lot of Tiananmen Square stuff right now because the Tiananmen Square massacre just had its anniversary. Why did I forget the word anniversary? Oh my god. Yeah, as we reopen, please be nice to service industry. Yeah, good luck on that. We just had a big conversation about why that's not going to happen. Jen Zedong. All right. With salvation in sight, Ontario approaches peak COVID incoherence. What? We're approaching it? Don't you think we've been through it? I feel like we've been through it, Chris. Chris Sally. Trying to tell us that, just now we're approaching incoherence. I think it's been pretty incoherent from the beginning, bud. Yeah. Close friend will no longer let me come over because I'm getting vaccinated. Okay. So your close friend won't let you come over because you're getting a vaccine. That's tough, man. Ruth, I think there will be civil war and separation between the North and South within the country, while all the southern states stay poor and the larger, richer states, the Dems will keep to themselves. I mean, yeah, it's really difficult to see how that doesn't happen, right? Most of the wealth is on the coasts, right? Silicon Valley is Seattle, sorry, no, that's not accurate. Where the heck, it's California? Why am I blanking on this? Why is my brain so stupid today? It's because it's Friday. No, what am I doing? Silicon Valley. Yeah, California. I should have known that. Ugh, stupid brain, right? So, it's there's so much wealth in California right now, right? And places like Washington, right? Oregon, they're not going to want to stick it out with these southern states. I less see it as north-south, and I see it more as east-west, with what's called the flyover states sort of breaking off and making their own kind of coalitions with one another. And then big conversations start to come down to okay, so you've got New York, Philadelphia, right? The sort of the original 13 colonies, right? The original 13 colonies likely band together, right? California bands together, and it'll be coast on coast, right? So one coast, East Coast, West Coast, and Texas might become its own kind of conglomeration of stuff, right? We'll see, but absolutely, right? The wealthy states will come and what's going to be heartbreaking to watch, and it is absolutely the truth, is that while this dismantlement happens, they're still going to do it along along capitalist lines, right? So the people who are living in the state of Texas or living in these places will still be inflicted with these one of Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos would love to take over a state and be the king of a state, right? And that's kind of how it is going to come. It's going to be Bill Gates will own this section of America. Jeff Bezos will be over here. Elon Musk will have his territory, right? And the billionaires will just cut everything up. and live in their own little community and be like a thing. I know, buddy. I know. And that's kind of how neo-feudalism will come to be, right? I know, buddy. I know. Neo-feudalism is scary. It's scary to talk about neo-feudalism. Oh, pug. He's a pug swimming through space and time. He's a pug flying through the air. He's swimming through space and time. You're a good boy, buddy. You're a good boy. You want a bit of peanut butter for that, buddy? You're a good boy. Peanut butter puggy time, peanut butter puggy time, peanut butter puggy time. There you go, buddy. Good boy. You got to give him a little treat after you do something like that to him, right? The people leaving from the Dem states is a myth. People are coming back, and I think the Dems will give Medicaid, UBI, etc., because there's no longer supporting Kentucky and Alabama. Well, and stuff like the basic income, the capitalists are going to try doing it because they are out of ideas, because they don't know what else to do, right? That, like, as the society crumbles and collapses, as things decline, they're going to eventually pass it because they won't know what else to do. They'll have people banging on their doors, right? They'll have people standing right outside their houses, right? Like, what else can they do? Will a basic income be successful? I mean, to be determined, but it's certainly like, it has the potential to be one of those tipping point policies, right? Where, like, things can start to tip in a direction where suddenly a bunch of progressive stuff starts to happen because we get a basic income through, and a lot of people start asking themselves, well, wait, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Why don't we move forward on this? Why are we pretending like these capitalists matter at all? Like, and I generally find, like, and I'm seeing, again, there seems to be an upswell of the kind of talk where people are saying, oh, we're going to lose a bunch of people to the United States, like the brain drain conversation, right? Remember in the 90s there was this big brain drain myth that went around? Well, I took a look at a bunch of data about the brain drain around that time, and I literally was like, there isn't one. It doesn't exist. Like, sure, there are people who are migrating, but they're not migrating at higher levels than they have been previously. And, like, it's literally like these capitalists just took a look at basic migration patterns and then started to claim as though, oh, people are migrating, therefore it's because capitalism in the United States is better. It was like this big neoliberal argument that because you could be paid more in the United States, we were losing a whole bunch of people. And I'm like, okay, but there's no evidence for that, right? Like, people migrate. And they migrate for a whole bunch of reasons, right? But since when have the capitalists ever needed evidence to make a claim? All those patriots will want to come back to those communist and socialist states. Yeah, and let's be really honest, dude. Like, the people who are in the southern states especially, like, if you are in this section, right, of America, right through here, you don't know what communism or socialism is. Like, it's really highly likely that you don't. And anytime I see anybody from this area talking about communism or socialism, I'm just like, you do not really know. Like, you don't know. These are the guys who are saying things like communism and Nazism are the same, right? Like, wow. If you're saying that out loud, there's such a far, long road for you if you're saying that kind of stuff out loud. I do want to alarm you. There may be variants in Ontario. Yeah. There are variants. Like, there are variants in Ontario. That's what makes, like, we are starting to get to a point now where I genuinely am starting to believe that the pharmaceutical companies want to keep this game going as long as they can, right? That they aren't actually that interested in releasing a vaccine that will be super effective. right? And like, why would they? They want to treat it. They don't want to cure it. They want to treat it. And I mean, I take a look at our unwillingness to actually send vaccines into India, right? And that India has just become kind of a factory for COVID, right? That COVID just like this, the pharmaceutical company might just like draw a circle around this and be like and call this the petri dish, right? There's your petri dish, where we cultivate COVID, right? This is the COVID cultivation zone right here. So if you're a pharmaceutical company, I mean, what else would you be saying, right? You're not sending vaccines in. You're not trying to cure this place. You're not trying to clean COVID out of this place. If anything, it's the opposite of that, right? And there's like, how many people live in India? It's like hundreds of millions of people. Are they like up in the billions? Population of India. Yeah, 1.3 billion. So 1.3 billion people live here. About the same number as live in China, right? And they're not getting support. They're not getting help. Like, China is trying to send stuff in there, but nobody else is. And so, like, this is like just a petri dish. And so what happens? Variants come out of here. Same story with Africa, huge sections of Africa. So just like variants are going to come out of here, they're going to go up into Europe, right? We're going to, because we have like a globalized trade network, right? It's all going to spread around, which is exactly how COVID spread around in the first place, because we have a globalized trade network. And it's a total disaster. So yeah, we'll be dealing with this for a long time. The vaccines were studied and they found one dose didn't control them, but two did. Yeah, we'll see though. Because like, vaccines are only really work if everybody gets them. And we're explicitly keeping people away from them, right? We're explicitly. So, we'll see. Yeah, not worth it anymore. Attendance sliding at Ontario's virtual schools as parents and kids are burned out. Yeah, that's capitalism, baby. That's the point. The point is to burn people out. That's the point. And then when they burn out, you abandon them, right? And the people who didn't burn out get rewarded. And the whole point of the educational system here in Ontario and in Canada generally isn't to actually educate anybody. It's to just find the people who are most obedient, right? That when you tell them to do something, they do it and they don't complain. And when they do it the best that they can, right? Like, that's the whole point of the education system, is to weed out people who burn out, weed out people who are rebellious, weed out people who don't see the point of going along with what you're doing, and find the people who are completely obedient and completely willing to pour their heart and soul into pointless activities that benefit no one, least of all themselves. And those are the people who you want to get into universities, and then you find the most obedient people from there, and those are the people who you want to hire, right? And when you hire those people, well, what do you know about them? You know that they're completely subservient and obedient, that they're going to completely do everything you tell them to do, no matter how pointless it is, and will just go along with the system that they've been along. That's the purpose of the education system. And so telling people, oh, well, we're burning out because this virtual school concept, it's just weeding out people. That there's a group of people that'll stick it through, and those are your future capitalists. Those are not capitalists. Those are your futures doctor, lawyer, engineer types, right? Like, those are the people who are obedient and going to do what they say. So we need to ensure that they get put into positions that pay them well, because they're like the first line of defense, right? They're the cultural line of defense. Those are the people who are actually going to stand up and defend the system, because the system rewarded them for their subservience, right? And that's the reality about education and in a capitalist structure, is that if you completely subserviate yourself to it, and you're not an individual, you're not a person really, and you just sell yourself into the system completely, it will reward you with $100,000 a year, right? As long as you keep doing the thing that they tell you to do. And so then those people turn around, and of course, when people like me stand up and are like, the system is worthless, they're the first people to defend it because they've sold their entire lives to it. And that's the whole role of the education system. And they'll be the first people. Oh, you're just lazy. It's like, no, we just refuse to subserviate ourselves to a system that destroys us. Like, it's pretty black and white. Oh, Jeff, I have not got my vaccine yet. Part of the problem is that I haven't, I moved and I didn't like transfer my health card from province to province. And so now I've got all my documentation together, finally. And I've already got a video lined up for Monday, so I don't actually have to do a video Monday. And I'm going to go down, I'm going to get a new health card, get that transferred over, and then I can set up an appointment and actually get my vaccine. And it has nothing to do with like anti-vax or anything like that. It has everything to do with just I can't get my shit together. That's it. Oh yeah, Ruth. It'll happen. It'll happen. I believe it, Ruth. I believe it. Keep. Don't stop. West Taiwan. That's hilarious.
Terrorism is an effective way to... I've been reviewing the history of armed rebellion, and it appears that terrorism is an effective way to promote political change.
Yes, it can be, but I have never subscribed to the theory that political power flows from the battle of a gun.
Yet there are numerous examples when it was successful. The independence of the Mexican state from Spain, the Irish unification of 2024, and the Kenji Rebellion.
Yes, I'm aware of them.
Then would it be accurate to say that terrorism is acceptable when all options for peaceful settlement have been foreclosed?
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. You know what, man? That's what I love about Star Trek The Next Generation. Star Trek The Next Generation, more so than any other Star Trek, actually really dug its heels into big political commentary and big major political and economic issues. Way more. Like, the original Star Trek had a kind of like larger statement and sort of a more naive or glossy outlook. There was less sort of debate and more like just sort of sloganeering. But Star Trek The Next Generation really would dig into big issues like this and really have like big long conversations. And then when like Deep Space Nine started to show up, it also engaged a bit into that, but started to get a little bit more pew-pew, right? A little bit more laser beams and shoot-a-shoot. And then like you get now the modern stuff like Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Discovery is pointless. Like, it really is just like laser beams, pew-pew, alternate dimension. Like, they're not interested in having a real discussion. The best that you get is like at the end of an episode, you'll get the lead character like say like some kind of trite thing. And the reboot of Picard. Picard was such a disappointment to me because they took the like easiest possible conversation to have, which is like about AI and the future of AI rights, and should an artificial intelligence be considered like a human being. And it's an issue that like doesn't even really exist in our society yet, really. So of course you can take a strong position on it. But like Star Trek: The Next Generation, they would take strong positions and defend from communist perspectives. Like, they live in a communist society. That's what they've got. And I wish they had have done a better job of sort of attempting to articulate what it would actually look like what the structure of that society would actually look like. But you can't really fault them for not. Like, these guys are screenwriters. They're not actually economists. They're not actually these guys. And how do you attempt to create a blueprint while your own country is engaged in the destruction of said blueprint in the first place? It's very difficult to do. Star Trek Next Generation, I love it. I love it. So it's Like, I literally, like, the works of Shakespeare, the Bible, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like, this is where I put it at that level, without a doubt. 914 cases of COVID, so we're popping back up. We're popping back up. All right. Anti-Chinese leftists be like, American workers struggle to feed themselves, but they've got freedom. China lifting 700 million people out of poverty, right? Like, I can't hear it. And that's, like, the truth. like China, you can critique it, and I do, especially in regards to Hong Kong, because I just think they're just bungling Hong Kong completely. But, like, they have done good things. It's very difficult to say that China has not done good things. Zanzibar is holding a vaccine clinic, no health card needed. Oh, that's good to know. Service Ontario is allowing health card license registration do not expire. Yeah, I just need to go do it. I'm just being so lazy. All right, just not getting my stuff together. Ontario expanding accelerated second dose bookings to more Ontarians ahead of schedule. Great. Great. So I recently did some research on Stalin because somebody invited me to their podcast to talk about Stalin because I'm the Canadian communist, and so I generally would be kind of I'm more sympathetic to Stalin than your average Westerner, I think. And when hey Vince, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. Leave a subscription on your way out, eh? I'll answer your question in a second, but I'll just finish this point. So I did a bunch of investigation on Stalin, and I walked away thinking, like, this guy was like a gunslinger. Like, he was just like an old school outlaw gunslinger, right? He's like fighting against the Tsar, and all the pictures of him when he's young, he looks like Wyatt Earp. Like, he's wearing a cowboy hat, and he's got, like, the big duster on, and you can really see him, like, pulling back and just... And, like, his entire... So he ends up being, like if anybody's familiar with Firefly, the lead guy, Malcolm, I believe is his name, he's kind of like that. Like, that's kind of the guy he was. And he ended up being, like, really important military commander to the Soviets during that period, during his life. And so it's just, I just feel like when people look at Stalin, you got to remember, like, this guy's just a dude, and he's just trying to, like, figure his way. And so he's more like a Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly than anything, which I love. Anyway, so Vince, to your question, thoughts on Doug Ford shutting down the Ontario legislature until September 13th? It's so anti-democratic. How is Ford supported? I mean, you kind of just answered your own question. It's true. Like, Ford's an idiot. Like, he like, are we surprised? Like, he's an authoritarian from the outset, right? He's a drug dealer. He's obviously there just to make a whole bunch of money for himself. He didn't ask for this pandemic. Like, if there is a God, I think that God was completely pulling the biggest prank ever, right? Like, he's that a being like God would be looking at the situation and be like, wait, you're telling me that the idiots who are saying that the best thing to do is individualism and, like, this rugged, like, separate everything and sell and privatize and all that kind of stuff, these idiots... Right now, there's Donald Trump is the president of the United States, literally a game show host. And most states and most provinces have elected literal, like, idiots, like total morons, into their power. And people like Doug Ford are, like, Doug Ford is in politics to plunder the place. That's what he's here to do. He's not here to do anything else. He's not here to help anybody. He doesn't give a shit about any of that. He is here for money for Doug Ford. And that's it. And he'll say anything and he'll do anything to convince anybody, that he's interested in doing anything other than that. But it's obvious that that's what he's doing. And so, yeah, of course he's going to shut down legislature, right? Like, if it was up to Doug Ford, like, if he could genuinely get away with it, he would have come into power, destroyed everything, stolen as much money as he could have, shut the legislature down until literally the next election, and just walked away from the smoldering room that he created, right? And so in the midst of all of that, here comes God being like, and a minor increase from the flu, right? Like, just like the flu +2. And it just collapses everything and reveals these guys to be frauds and idiots and liars and total agents of bullshit. Like, they're the stupidest people and the worst people to have in power right now. Right? The absolute worst people to have in power. Oh, I know, buddy. If you're wondering what I'm doing with this, I'm playing with my dog. Well, he's looking at me with his big eyes being like, you gotta throw it. You gotta throw it. And I do. Go get it. Oh, that was a terrible throw. Oh, well. Exactly. I wish this was a prank. September 13th. How are we supposed to hold our elected officials accountable? Vote them out. Like, vote them out. Because, like, when Doug, after the Conservatives and Doug Ford hit us with the third wave, because they completely allowed it to happen. They knew it was going to happen, and they just let it happen. The polls dipped, right? And in Canadian politics, like, we're talking about, like, 1 or 2% matters in Canadian politics. Like, 1 or 2% is the difference between not being elected, having a minority government, or having a majority government. And if Doug Ford's opinion polls dip another 2%, he is officially unelectable here in Canada. He cannot be elected, right? And so, for him, probably the best thing for him to do is shut down the legislature, because if you shut down the legislature, well, you know, shit happens. You can't blame me. You can't blame me. You can't. And the reality is that. Yes, exactly. And that's exactly the way to say it, Vince. 2022 can't come fast enough, but the 30% of fascist supporters in Ontario is scary. And that is how we should be talking about it. It is terrifying that Doug Ford has the support that he has, right? It's terrifying that there's even 20% support. It's terrifying that there are people who are still now willing to vote for somebody who has proven themselves not only completely incompetent, but also to be actively working against the base interest of literally everybody, right? Like, the thing I keep saying, and hopefully, like, I hope somewhere in the world some conservative will put 2 and 2 together on this and actually start talking about it this way. Doug Ford is attempting to move forward with further privatization of the long-term care systems, right? We know for a fact that these long-term care systems that have been privatized under the Mike Harris administration, Mike Harris is also a fascist, are literal shitholes. We know this because the military came in during the pandemic and were like, oh, these places are shitholes. They're infested with bugs. People are dying because they can't get access to water. Staff has been cut to bare bones level, and some of the staff are living in shelters, for Christ's sake. So we're talking about, like, impoverished people taking care of our elderly, and everything's a total fucking disaster. And this is the system that Doug Ford wants to expand. And guess who's going to be inflicted with these long-term care homes soon? Conservative voters. Because if you're voting conservative, you're probably old, right? That's what all the numbers show. And so literally, if you're checking conservative right now, being like, yep, conservative it is, well, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to end up in one of these long-term care homes where there's going to be bug infestations. You're not going to be able to get your diaper changed. You're going to be abandoned, right? Your food is going to be total shit. You're not going to be able to get a glass of water, right? It's going to be hell for you in the last years of your life where you're the most vulnerable. And then you're going to turn around and complain to your children who are exhausted, can't find a place working 2 jobs, totally burnt out, and they're going to turn around and be like, yeah, you voted for this. Right? Like, that's what's happening. and yeah, like, conservatives and Republicans, like, capitalists, people who are pro-capitalist are very gullible. Canadians generally are extremely gullible. We're a very gullible people. Like, we believe literally anything we're told. We believe, and we will give credence to literally anybody. We are, it's exactly like, there's this episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine where Quark, a Ferengi, who's a capitalist, right? The Ferengis are capitalists, finds out that we were dropping nuclear bombs during a period of time. And he literally goes, they were dropping nuclear bombs in a closed atmospheric environment? Oh shit, I could have sold them anything. Yep. You can sell us anything. We are extremely gullible. We are extremely gullible. And we don't like evidence, we don't like facts, we don't like anything that counters the prevailing ideology. So if you own the largest speaker and you spew out as much shit as you can, that's just going to be believed because it's loud, right? We are still monkeys, right? We are still monkeys. Like, this is something to really understand about humans, generally. We are still monkeys. And if you take a loudspeaker and you scream something at a monkey, right, that they understand, they're going to believe it. And why are they going to believe it? Because it's loud and it's screaming at us. It must be the truth, right? And it is. That's exactly what it is. And then if you walk into that environment where a bunch of these monkeys believe what they're being told because they're being screamed at it, and you say, actually, I have a piece of evidence that completely debunks that entire thing, they're going to tell you to get lost because the screaming speaker is telling the truth. Right? Humans are not smart. Like, we aren't intelligent. We just say that we are because it makes us feel good about ourselves. Like, we are a very, very, and North America especially is extraordinarily gullible. And we have to be. We have to be gullible because if we actually believed the truth, right? Like, if we actually paid attention to what the truth was and listened to the truth, we would have to admit fully that we are the villains of this narrative, right? Like, and are we going to do that? Do you think that the West is going to stand up and actually go, yeah, we're as bad as the Nazis? And we are. We're as bad as the Nazis, right? Do you think we're going to do that? Do you think that's going to happen anytime soon? Or do you think there's going to be like a massive civil war in the United States before even a portion of the population is willing to say, yeah, maybe we should be a bit more introspective, right? Like, and that's not even an admission. That's just saying we need to be more introspective. Hey, Nick, how you doing? Go back to monkey time. I mean, we might as well fucking, like, what's better, right? Being a group of monkeys living in, like, a beautiful environment where there's food everywhere, right? Kind of just chilling and vibing. Or living in this, like, highly technological society where everyone's exhausted and with this threat of existential dread of climate change as well as nuclear bombardment. Like, and of course I'm, like, romanticizing the monkey time. Obviously that's tough. Has its own difficulties. But none of those difficulties include the possibility of the total eradication of the species through self-inflicted harm. Right? We are very stupid. Like, we are very stupid. If we were intelligent, we would not be doing this. Like, we would literally look at our situation and we would go, oh, that's stupid, and we would stop. So we're just not very intelligent. Yeah. Another banger article from the professional cyberbully himself. U.S.-Danish spying scandal, a wake-up call for Europeans. Okay. I don't really know what's going on there, honestly. I feel like there. I mean, this is absolutely the truth. Like, the United States is spying on all of the European world leaders, right? Which is going to be a total, like, alienating Europe is going to be an enormous, enormous problem for the United States moving forward. And spying on their leadership and having that be uncovered, right? It's actually a major international scandal. And, like, there are lots of places in the EU. Like, when Westerners talk about the EU, we talk about the EU as if it's like this treasured jewel. That being part of the EU, of course, everyone wants to be part of the EU. How would you not want to be part of the EU? It increases your economic activity and all of this kind of stuff. Well, here's a country, Belarus. Here's a country, never joined the EU, never engaged in the neoliberal project. Once the Soviet Union collapsed, Belarus basically kept in place it even kept in place its leadership. Lukashenko was the leader during the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? And they kept all their policies. They didn't privatize. They didn't do all that kind of stuff. They've got the best economy on the continent. Their economy is better than Germany's economy. Their economy is better than Ukraine's economy. It's better than France. Better than Spain, right? Why would you ever want to join the EU, right? And Belarus has just allied itself with Russia, China, and Iran through the Belt and Road Initiative. Why would they ever give a shit about this? And there's going to be a lot of these places that are going to start to ask themselves, like, wait, what the fuck are we doing? Why the fuck are we allowing the United States to spy on us and be a bunch of dickheads to us? Like, when we literally could just, like, link up with this Belt and Road Initiative and just kind of trade amongst ourselves and tell the United States to slag off, which is exactly what's going to happen. And once the United States starts to collapse in on itself, once their dollar is worthless, once oil plummets, once nobody wants to deal with these backwards redneck hicks anymore who keep electing idiots like Donald fucking Trump, the EU and the Europeans are going to start looking at Russia and China, and they're going to start going, yeah, those places look a little bit more stable. You know, those places look a little bit less insane. Don't you think? Like, sure, you can critique China and, like, China's involvement in Hong Kong and, like, all that kind of stuff. You can critique that all you want. But you know what China's not doing? Blowing up the entire Middle East, destroying a socialist country in Libya in one of the most egregious actions, I think, of the century. You know, it's not, and you know what else China's not doing? Actively spying on us. So, like, the U.S. is doing everything it can to alienate itself from the world, and it's going to get really, really obvious as time moves forward. Second one sounds dystopia. Well, you do. You live in a dystopia, dude. Like, this is a dystopia. Speaking of, onward to dystopia. Did someone say dystopia? That's great, bud. I love that. I love that. Did that just conjure you? Did someone just say the word dystopia and you were like, my dystopia, the dystopia sign, my dystopia sense is tingling, and you just like show up? Did someone say dystopia? Yay! Oh, that's really nice. That's really fun. I like that a lot. Yeah, hey, maybe we should think about our war crimes a bit more, I think. Yeah, dude. Like, how about the Yemeni genocide, right? How about the Yemeni genocide that's happening? How about the Palestinian genocide, right? Like, I love that, like, the West is like, China is doing a genocide against the Uyghurs that we can't prove or have any evidence or show. And we can literally show you an open-air prison in Gaza, right? Gaza is an open-air prison. There's no other way to describe it. And Westerners are just like, normal. Two sides to that conflict. And then you're like, okay, what about the Yemeni genocide? And they're literally like, Yemeni? Where's Yemen? Right? They don't fucking even know. Like, they don't know this is happening. They don't give a shit. right? As long as they get their stupid ice cream and like they can drive their big dumb trucks, like they don't give a fuck. Why would anyone want to stay allied to this nonsense? Like, why would anyone want to stay allied to this crazy nonsense that's going on over there, man? Like, it's like the United States took a look at Florida and went, that's what we're doing. We're just going to Floridize ourselves. No hate to anybody from Florida, except, honestly, I don't know. Florida seems insane to me. Seems like the most insane place to live. Maybe that's why Trump wanted to buy Greenland. Trump wanted to buy Greenland? Why? There's just nothing here. Do you see socialism returning into Europe, like how it was post-World War II? Neolibs and conservatives are in charge of the EU and most European countries. It's already happening, bud. It's already happening. Like, you take a look at places like Spain, Portugal to a degree, Italy, like France. It's already moving in that direction. Even like Germany, right? Here's a great actually Germany has a great example. So in Germany, if you are a company that has 2,000 employees, right? Not hard to do. If you're like Walmart, Amazon, any of this, 50% of the shares have to be owned by the workers. You want to operate high-level industry in Germany, 50% of the shares of the company need to be owned by the workers, and that's law in Germany. Right, so while they have sort of a neoliberal positioning, like when we hear about Europe, we always hear about the United Kingdom, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason we're always bombarded with news from the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom is extremely neoliberal, right? We don't ever hear news coming out of Germany, Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, like never, right? And the only time we hear, like Greece, we hear news about Greece because it's like, oh, Greece failed. And why did they fail? Oh, it's because the Greek people don't want to work. That kind of narrative. And we're like, no, it's because the neoliberal project is a complete and total failure. And Greece is like the butt of it, right? Like, and then like, nobody wants to talk about the fact that places like Poland, Hungary, Romania, Serbia, Bulgaria, that used to have a strong communist vein, and then kind of switched over to neoliberal capitalism. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that these countries are like, their populaces are already saying it was better under communism, right? That like, in some places it's like 50-50, but in a lot of places it's like 60-40. People are like, it was better under communism. Like, we had a better society under communism. And when you look at Belarus, hard to disagree. And of course there is, alongside of that, there is sort of an upswell of far-right nationalism, right? In Ukraine, there's literal fascists, there's fascist organizations that exist all over the place. And you have like the Golden Dawn getting like 5% public support in Germany. A literal fascist organization, right? That calls itself fascist, getting 5% of the vote in Germany, right? Yeah, I pay attention to that if I was in Germany, right? I know how to vote in Germany. And the capitalists aren't going to be. Yeah, I mean, and it is a process, Vince. Like, I'm not trying to pretend like everybody involved in it is like socialism all the way, but it's especially with like Gen Z. Gen Z is a huge tipping point, and you can already see it happening, right? That like we're going in this direction. The boomers are dying, right? These sort of clueless, duped idiots who seem to think that the society is still structured this way, literally dropping bombs behind them as they go out. These boomers are going to die, right? And what's going to be left is like Gen X and Gen Y, who are more sympathetic to the plight of the millennials, right? Who are looking at the millennials and being like, yeah, sorry, I'm glad it wasn't me. I caught a little bit of this. Right? I'm gonna hang on to it, right? Which, hard to blame them, but like once the boomers are gone, like the millennials are coming up, and there are huge sections of the millennials are like full scale revolution now. huge sections of millennials are saying we need a huge, full-scale revolution today. And if you're Gen Z, you're looking upwards. You're seeing these clueless, delusional boomers who are saying idiotic things like, just go in with a resume and shake his hand. That's how I got my job and make $50 billion a second. Like, boomers were literally able to walk into an establishment without a resume, shake a person's hand, and get a job that paid them, that could pay for a spouse, a car, a house, and 3 kids with vacation and benefits. And they were able to do that, and they'll tell you. They'll say straight to your face, just go walk in and shake his hand, what's the problem? And they don't pay attention to anything, they don't pay attention to the news, they don't pay attention to what's actually happening in the world. They still think it's like that. They still think it's like that. So they're so detached and completely clueless, and they have no idea what's going on, and you're a Gen Z who have been rejected for your 500th job where you had to fill out a form that's already on the resume that you created in the first place. You see the generation directly above you saying, we need a full-scale revolution now. Like, we need a full-scale revolution right fucking now. And the Gen Z is going like, yeah, this is stupid. Like, this whole thing has failed. It's already failed. Like, if you're under the age of 30, it's already failed, right? It's a total and complete failure. If I ever met a Gen Z who is voting conservative, I would just be like, you are the most delusional person alive. And they have to exist. I mean, statistically, it's just got to happen, right? But for the most part, so what's going to happen is you're going to have this block of millennials who have been abandoned by capitalism en masse, and we know it. Even the people who are successful in millennial, like, I have doctor friends, I have lawyer friends, I have engineer friends. All of these guys are saying like, yeah, this fucking thing doesn't work. It obviously doesn't work. It's clear that it doesn't work. And so the millennials are gonna grow up, like, when I'm 60, right, and the boomers are dead, and Gen Z are just like, well, hopefully by the time I'm 60, there's already been a revolution. Like, the millennials and the Gen Z are gonna come together, and we're gonna outnumber these idiotic, clueless, delusional boomers. We're gonna wipe them out, right? I don't see any reason for there to be a conservative or a liberal party in this country. Like, these guys need to go away, right? Like, they are the reason we have had mass genocide in our country. They are the reason why our economy is in free fall collapse. And they are doing everything they can to keep it that way, right? Get rid of both of them. There's no reason to vote conservative. There's no reason to vote liberal. If you're under the age of 40 and you vote conservative or liberal, I think you're insane. Like, I think you're actually, and then you'll stand up and be like, well, if I don't vote for liberal, then the conservative gets in. So, like, a liberal is just a conservative wagging a Black Lives Matter flag. Who gives a fuck, right? They're going to vote for the interests of capital. They're going to vote for the destruction of the society and the species. They're going to vote against every interest you have in the first place. Get rid of them. Vote for literally anybody else. Like, literally anybody else at this stage in the game. And so it's very difficult for me to believe that that there isn't going to be a swing to the progressive. Because once these boomers are dead, right? Like, once these boomers are dead, who's voting for, and like, we want to vote for a society that works for us, right? Like, I would like to have a reasonable existence. And we're going to vote for a reasonable existence, right? We just haven't, like, we for the longest time, we've actually been thinking that the people who are like, take a look at somebody like Jordan Peterson. There's a clear example of what I'm talking about. Clueless boomer stands up, talks, bunch of young people go, wow, what a wise person, instead of, what a fucking old delusional hack, right? So we give credence to the elderly with this idea of like, oh, well, we have to, what's the phrase? Like, do honor to the elderly, or respect your elders. There it is. Respect your elders. When the reality is like, these guys are cranks. Fucking get rid of them. They don't know what they're talking about. They are trying to destroy your society. They are trying to destroy the species. And it is getting to the point where I have to start concluding that it's intentional. And if that's the case, then what we're fighting against is a death cult, right? Like, what is happening other than the fact that we're fighting against a death cult that's actively and intentionally attempting to destroy us, right? Because these guys, like, they got all of the wealth, they got all of the money, and they have it, and they've realized that all of that wealth and money hasn't actually fulfilled them, because they have no spirituality, they have no existential self, that they've defined themselves by their wealth, and they realize that it's meaningless and empty. And so why shouldn't they burn this place out on their way to the grave, right? Who gives a fuck if after that, like, who cares after I die, right? If everybody else dies with me, I guess, isn't that the greatest way to leave my mark and my legacy and find my meaning? If I destroy this place on my way out, I guess I was the most important person. I win, baby. Maybe then I'll find fulfillment and emptiness that I can't find in my life. Ugh. I am enjoying watching some libs finally realize Dems won't get anything accomplished. They're a bit slow, but they're coming around. Yeah, and they will. And, like, what's going to happen in America politically, like, the Democratic Party will become more progressive, right? And who knows? Like, let's sprinkle in a dose of hope, right? Let's sprinkle in a little dose of hope. It's completely possible that as the elections move forward, the Democratic Party becomes more and more progressive as the country becomes more and more progressive, right? It is completely possible that this actually happens, that the populace becomes more and more progressive, and that the Democratic Party becomes more and more progressive because of it. And as time moves forward, it's also completely possible that the Republicans just start to lose more and more support, right? They stop, and they stop being able to actually get anything elected and anything done. And it's completely possible that the Republican Party just disappears, right? It's happened before in American history. There used to be a party called the Whigs, right? The Whigs, it was the Whigs and the Republicans. And then the Whigs just lost support completely. They couldn't actually get anybody elected, and they knew it. They knew they would never get anybody elected ever again, and so the party disappeared and gets replaced by the Democratic Party. Could happen again. Could happen again. So that's possible. But like, it is going to get more and more obvious in this regard. Like, if in the next election, which is soon, by the way, right? The midterm elections are soon. It's only every 2 years. It's completely possible that the Democrats actually do take things over, right? That right now there's, like, they can say, like, well, you know, the Senate, it's split 50-50, and we've got a couple of Democrats here who are actually Republicans and vote with Republicans in the Senate. So, you know, what are you going to do about it? And if the midterm election happens and it swings even further in the Democrats' favor, which it could, that excuse will disappear. And then when the Democrats continue doing nothing, right, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, it's completely fraudulent. Yeah, I hear about the far right in France. Yeah, Gen Z here, my boomer coworkers would say things used to be different, able to get a job in a day or two. And I don't mean to, like, dump on the boomers. Like, let me be really clear on something, actually. Like, that was like a moment of rage against the boomers that exists inside of me, for sure. There are lots of boomers who I think are just like, yeah, something's gone wrong. Like, it used to be different. And I just wish they'd vote with us. Right? All of the numbers are telling me the only people that are voting conservative, well, not the only people, but the majority of people that are voting conservative are the boomers. Right? So it's just like, yeah, that's how I got most of my jobs till the 90s. Then it stopped. Yeah, and it really, like, why do you think Smashing Pumpkins and like that kind of Nirvana and these sort of quasi-protest Rage Against the Machine, right? These guys came out of the 90s. It's because neoliberalism changed everything. The neoliberal project, trade deals like NAFTA, right? Figures like Mulrooney here in Canada, Thatcher in the UK, and Reagan in the States, really created this neoliberal project, which is a failure. It's a total failure on the face of it. And that starts in the 80s and then manifests itself in the 90s where people realize, oh, I can't get a job anymore. And the job I can get has like suppressed wages and everything's shitty and everything's collapsing. And then it did. It fundamentally collapsed in 2008. We never really recovered from it. We've just sort of pretended we did. Oh, dude, you're 20, so you just entered the workforce? Good luck, Nick. Good luck, bud. Tell me how it goes. Let's celebrate successes, and I will stand in solidarity with your failures, as this system is designed to make you fail. Never vote liberal, never vote conservative. You have they are there to funnel your political energy away from a revolutionary project. Mining gold-shrouded boomers is a big innocent industry now. Oh, hey, 90% of America's industry is 25-year-olds living in a basement selling Trump flags. But that's exactly what happened with Gen X, right? That's exactly what happened with Gen X, is that all of the wealth went to the boomers, and Gen X understood immediately, oh, the only way to get money is to sell these boomers things, right? And they were somewhat successful doing that, right? And now here we are, and we're trying to sell the boomers on some, but the thing is that the culture has moved on so much that like the only thing that we can sell these boomers anymore is like, we used to be able to be way more racist than this, right? So like all we have to sell these guys is like nostalgia and delusion, like Trump signs. That's why right wing is so grifty. Everyone is grifting boomers. Oh yeah, because we have to, right? We have to. There's nothing left. There's nothing left. Oh man, I hate Jordan Peterson. And let me be really clear about Jordan Peterson, right? Like I have his book 12 Rules for Life is by itself not a terrible book, right? And if somebody were to read that, and I'll be straight up with you, I read that book when I didn't know who he was. I just read this book and I thought, because he's a prairie boy, he's from Alberta, and the way he speaks is a very kind of prairie way to speak. And so I feel like I connected with him on that kind of level of we're both prairie boys, and he's just trying to lay out some hard truths, right? And he does. It's when you step outside of the 12 Rules for Life and you start taking a look at his larger body of work that you really realize that he's a crank, right? Like his debate against Slavoj Žižek was an embarrassment for him, like a total embarrassment. There's no other way to describe it, right? Like this big kind of cuddly looking teddy bear wearing like a black t-shirt and sweatpants. Totally rolls this guy as he's wearing like a suit that's shining and he looks all futuristic. Like literally, for those who don't know, Slavoj Žižek is a communist, right? And Peterson actually did a blog the night before that debate where he admitted and said outright that he still had to read the material. And it's like, why are you going into a debate with somebody, bud, when you haven't even read even one of their books, let alone the Communist Manifesto, let alone Capital, right? Like, just a total arrogant embarrassment for Peterson. And what's like interesting about him as a figure is that something like the 12 Rules for Life is like, not only is it kind of innocuous, I actually think lots of people would read it and think that it's kind of helpful, right? It is helpful to have somebody who's kind of giving you a shot in the arm. It is helpful to have somebody who's going to kind of give you a kick in the pants and be like, yeah, come on, right? But like, when you actually take a look at Peterson's critique of his own society, the wider society, you realize that he doesn't have one, right? He thinks that Western capitalism's the bee's knees. And why shouldn't he, right? He went from being a rancher's son, right? Incidentally, the reason why his family are ranchers in Alberta in the first place is because of the largest government handout in Canadian history through the Canadian Dominion Act. A person could literally move to Alberta and be given 360 acres of land for free. And so then Jordan Peterson lives on that free land given to his family by the government. And then he gets to go to a university when going to a university was super cheap, right? Become a professor there and then pretend as though he did it all himself. And that's where the core of his arrogance lies. He believes that his own innate energy is more powerful than the innate energy of all of humanity and then all of the forces of the universe itself. That what matters more is his own energy. So at the end of the day, he's just kind of an arrogant prick. Haha, thanks, man. Voted NDP 2019. Yeah. And Nick, I also suggest, and I suggest to everybody, please, for the love of God, join third-party, non-affiliated organizations. Organizations like Socialist Action, which is in the description below, because if all you do is like vote for NDP, right? If all you do is like put NDP on the ballot box, right? Then the NDP is just going to act like liberals, right? They're not going to move to the left. They're not going to do anything, right? If all you do is check the NDP box or give $5 to the NDP, they're going to pat you on the head, say thanks for the vote, and then ignore you completely. But if you go to a third-party, non-affiliated political organization like Socialist Action, and you start going into the NDP as blocks, as voting blocks, because that's what Socialist Action does. It actually goes into the party and it tries to get its own people elected, and it tries to get and it pushes the party to the left on important issues. That's why during this residential school period here in Canada, where we found 215 kids in a mass grave in Kamloops, why is the NDP standing up and being like, we need full investigation, we need to move forward on this kind of stuff? It's because of organizations within the NDP, such as Socialist Action, that are demanding it be so, right? So if you really, really want to push the society to the left and you want that to happen faster, don't just check that box. Don't just give $5 to the NDP or the Greens, right? Get involved in a third-party, non-affiliate organization that's going to approach these parties as voting blocks and say, if you want our votes, if you want our support, these are the policies that you have to support, and if you don't, then we abandon you. Hey Scott, I don't know if I've seen you around here. Thanks for popping in. Leave a like, share, subscribe. Everybody, leave a like, share, subscribe right now. Help me out. I need money. I'm so bored. It's a capitalist system. The world is horrible. Oh my God. Anyway, hey, just watched your video on Bill C-10. Thanks for the great explanation. I could not really understand the outrage of the bill. And let me go a little farther with you here, Scott, while I've got you. I hope you're still here. I think that all of the outrage surrounding Bill C-10 is a smokescreen, right? Usually when capitalist media outlets start to lose their minds about government overreach on a bill, on a thing like Bill C-10, it is being done to act as a smokescreen, so that they can say, like, no, look, we're trying to keep the government accountable. Look, we're doing our job as the media, keeping the government accountable. Look how we're focusing on worthless things like the We scandal, right? We're focusing on Bill C-10. Everybody look at the We scandal. Everybody look at Bill C-10. When the media starts acting this way, you can rest assured that it's because they need to set up a smoke screen to obfuscate actually important issues. And what's the actual important issue that they're attempting to obfuscate with Bill C-10? The Canadian Infrastructure Bank. Go watch my video on the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, where I describe straight up how this is a fascist institution that's been set up by the Trudeau Liberals in order to continue impoverishing everybody and continue enriching a capitalist class that entrenches capital into the system. And it's really interesting that when Jacobin does an article about the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, suddenly everything's about Bill C-10. Jacobin comes out with this really, really excellently well-written, thorough article about the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, and suddenly everything's about Bill C-10. Interesting how that works. Interesting how that works. So I think that Bill C-10 is being done as a smokescreen to deflect attention from the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, which is a dangerous institution that needs to be dismantled as soon as possible. Amazing, Scott. Amazing. So please subscribe. Please subscribe, dude. If you're here, this is what happens, man. Every weekday, I'm here 6 to 9. I do those videos every single day. I'm trying so hard to at least give another perspective. You ever notice you watch a panel show on like CBC or CTV or any of this kind of stuff, and they'll have like literally a far-right fascist on the panel who's telling you nonsense about like, oh, we got to worry about deficits and all this kind of stuff, and then they'll have like a liberal who's like, oh, you know, maybe we should try to make sure that people don't die of starvation in our society. And then they'll have like one other person, an expert, who's sort of an amalgamation of those two views. And then, oh yeah, there's no communist. There isn't even a socialist, right? That's just eliminated from the discourse completely, right? So the only panel perspective that you get is pro-capital, right? Well, here I am. You're right about this, Ruth. It really is about fear, about being a white minority. I think that's far more of a core issue than people like to think. That like white people are starting to realize that they are not going to be the majority anymore. That they are going to be the largest minority of minorities, right? And that instills in them this sense of total terror. Because white people, I mean, you know that we've done a whole bunch of bullshit, right? And there's this sort of sense in white culture that there's going to be a reprisal, that there's going to be a snapback, right? My general feeling on that is that probably not, like, in terms of a snapback, right? Like, it's probably not the case that, it probably is the case that, like, that was a big reason why they didn't want to free the slaves in America, because they were worried that if they freed the slaves, that the slaves would organize and kill their masters, which there are isolated incidents of that happening. But the idea, like, I just think these people want to live their lives, right? They just want to live in the world, right? And, like, stop setting them on the path of vengeance. And it probably won't happen. Oh yeah, Rising on the Hill. Those guys are no longer with the Hill. They have separated from the Hill. That's Sagar and Crystal Ball. I really love Crystal Ball. I find her to be very present and prescient. Sagar I'm a little bit soft on, but that makes sense because he's like a right-winger, right? Like, and he says that he's a right-winger. Like, I like Sagar because he's honest, and he is attempting to present things in an honest way, and he's willing to, and the fact that he's anti-corporate, right? So I like Sagar, but I don't think I would ever pay attention to Sagar if it wasn't for Crystal. And they're no longer with Rising, they're no longer with the Hill, so they've parted ways, which is hardly surprising because like they're fairly far progressive. Even as a right-winger, Sagar is really pretty far progressive, and the Hill is a conservative magazine, so their departure was sort of written in the stars. Crystal Ball looked into her crystal ball and saw it on the cards. So I think they have their own channel now on YouTube. Kyle Kalinske, which is Secular Talk, is at the top of the YouTube game. Kyle Kalinski's analysis is always very prescient, very important to listen to. He's very intelligent. He knows what he's talking about, and he's not trying to bullshit anybody. That's what's important about him, is that he's really not trying to bullshit anybody. Chapo Trap House, those guys are great. I love Chapo Trap House. I have like an intrinsic existential tie to Matt. Matt as a person, I'm really like, I feel connected to him as an individual. The reason why the Chapo Trap House guys are important is because they have interviews with people nobody has interviews with, and their perspective is they have the revolutionary perspective. So very important and important to listen to those guys, I think. Jimmy Dore is a really interesting and controversial figure. I believe, Chris, if you're still in the room, you and I had a big, long conversation about Jimmy Dore. I think Jimmy Dore is important. I think that he is outrage manifest, right? Like, that's really what he is. He's outrage manifest. I think that he's willing to stumble into controversial territory because of who he is as a person, and he does good work, and he tries to keep people. He's trying to inform people, and he's trying to be honest. So I understand why people don't like Dore, but I also understand why people really do. So, yeah, there's the breakdown for you, Vince. I pay attention to all those guys because it's important to pay attention to your competition. But that said, I find that especially none of these guys really do it, but there is a tendency for YouTube commentators to really kind of go after one another, right? And I feel like Jimmy Dore and there's like the Young Turks, and then there's another oh man, that's gonna drive me crazy. So there's another fellow who has his own show, and they all kind of go at each other, and I just find that's not helpful. It's just unfortunate, and that's a big reason why I don't like going after Jimmy Dore and all this kind of stuff, because he's doing good work, and it's important work that he's doing. And of course, as you do this work, you're going to have missteps, and you're going to fall on your face, and you're going to do things. So I say we approach all of this with more forgiveness in our heart. Onward says, I've narrowed down my political podcast consumption considerably. Chapo and Naked Capitalism comment threads are about it for me. And I mean, part of that is just like, we can only take so much, eh? Like, we can only really take so much. Like, this is existential damage that we're doing to ourselves, right? We are taking psychic existential damage when we wade into these subjects and these topics. And part of the reason why I think this show is going to be successful ultimately is that one of my major goals is to find an outlet and a catharsis for that existential and psychic damage that builds up inside of a person. So instead of it exploding at a stupid moment, we come together in solidarity and we express it. We get it out of ourselves. We find this kind of thing. And that I know that I end up being like a lightning rod, like Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is like this, where he's a lightning rod for this existential anger, right? That he really lets people pool it in on him and then just out into the world, right? And this is how we all keep our sanity. This is how we all stay sane, is by coming together, talking about this stuff, and letting it just come out, and cry and laugh and rage and just scream into the world and hope that by screaming into the world and coming together in rage and anger and angst, that it will somehow have some kind of ephemeral effect on the world itself, and that by coming together and manifesting it into the world, we can actually change things so that we can stop with this madness that we're doing. We can stop with this. What the fuck are you talking about that we massacred a people? What the fuck are you talking about that we took another people and enslaved them literally? Like, what in the fuck are you talking about? That cannot be the world. It cannot be this way. And we hope that we are going to come together and we are actually going to say, it cannot be this way and it will not be this way and we will change things. And we just hope that it will happen. And we hope that it will happen. Because the alternative is too horrible to even contemplate and imagine. And so here I am. Attempting to articulate that which we all know to be true, that if we don't change what we're doing, we're just going to keep massacring ourselves and ultimately it will destroy us. We know that that's the truth. We know that that's the truth. And anybody who wants to tell me otherwise is delusional or complicit. So in the end onward, yeah, like I can't blame you for pulling back, right? It's hard. And it's hard to just take it in. And like a big reason why I try to, anytime anybody comments, I try very hard to like comment back and read the comment. And I hope as this channel builds, it doesn't turn into, like you see, like Hassan, there's a fellow YouTuber by the name of Hassan, and his chat is just nonsense. It's just this spewing vomit. And I hope my chat never turns that way. I want to be able to talk back. I want to be able to continuously have this conversation because I think it's helpful. I think it's not only helpful for me, right? Because when you guys comment to me about this stuff, it means we're together in solidarity, right? It means that we're together in solidarity, and that's so important. And I think it's important, and fundamentally that's what I hope that I'm achieving for you, that there's some kind of solidarity and at least the knowledge, at least you know as you go along in your lives that there is somebody in the world who sees the world the way that you do. And I hope that's helpful. Robert, when you look at all the countries in the world, whites are a global minority, so why should whites become minorities in the last remaining countries? So why should whites become minorities in the last remaining countries whites are majorities in? That's like a that's like a how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I feel like whites are a global minority, so why should whites become minorities in the last remaining country whites are minorities in? I mean, why should they? They just are, right? They just are. And it's because they are a global minority, right? But their strategy, like the strategy of capitalism in the United States and Canada, because we're not having children to replace ourselves, right? Because we're all exhausted, we're all working way too hard, we're all moving forward. Capitalism is grinding us, right? It's grinding us to exhaustion. We don't actually have the energy or the time to actually have children, right? And this is a documented phenomenon. If it wasn't for immigration, population would be declining, and it would be declining fairly sharply, right? It wouldn't be a slow gradual, it would be a fairly, and it's because we're all grinding our lives away into capitalism. We're all fucking exhausted. So what can't we do? We can't have sex. Right? Millennials have had less sex than Gen Z and Gen X and Gen Boomers. Oh my God, they're not a Gen anything. They're just Boomers. We have had less sex than them, right? Straight up. And if you're having less sex, it means you're having less babies. And we don't have the money or the time to actually take care of these children, right? So we don't have kids in the first place. But that presents a very major problem for capital, right? Well, if we don't have people making kids, we don't have workers, right? And so that creates labor scarcity, which means that we'll have to pay them more, right? So what have they done instead? Well, they've gone over here and they've blown the places up, right? Created refugee camps, and then they go into the refugee camps and say, okay, who wants to come to Canada, right? And so then all of these refugees are funneling into Canada and the United States, right? From places that we have blown up, right? We blow these places up. Anybody that wants to tell me we haven't blown these places up, I think is out to lunch completely. So we blow these places up and then go into the refugee camps, get immigration coming in here so that they can work these cheap jobs for a wage that's constantly in decline, to suppress wages, to suppress benefits, to suppress all this kind of stuff. Because being in Canada has got to be better than being in the refugee camp that we created by bombing them, right? And so they come in, and then that allows the capitalists to turn around and create white supremacist movements and fund white supremacist movements to fight against the immigrants that we created in the first place. And so, yeah, white people are going to decline and be in a minority because we're having less children, and we've got tons of refugees coming in because we keep bombing these places, right? And so why should it decline? Well, that's why. We bomb the shit out of the countries, a bunch of refugees come in, and we're not having any kids because capitalism has exhausted us and we can't. Yeah, a couple of people have mentioned this, Nick. Jeff said earlier that his stuff wasn't showing up. I don't know what's going on with that. YouTube's a bit inscrutable in this regard, and anytime I kind of look around, I'm gonna take a look at this after the stream, and which, holy shit, it's already 8:30. Wow, time flies when you're having fun. Anyway, I'll look into that because I'm worried that there's some kind of, I don't know. I'm just how we blow up the third world. Yeah, you're just responding. Yeah. And like, and so it's this incestuous cycle, right? That if I were to like, I kind of want to do this with this, right? Like I kind of want to do this with this. Indulge me. We're gonna go on an incredible journey through time and space. F11, pull out. That's good enough. Print screen, doink. Then F11, back down we go. Indulge me, we're going on a magical journey. Indulge me, we're going on a magical tour. Ba ba ba. Okay, so we are blowing up all of this. Blown up completely, right? Blown up completely. Blown up completely. Blown up totally. Where else? I mean, we haven't blown these places up, but we definitely have like turned Venezuela into a shithole for sure. We're definitely inflicting stuff in Bolivia, and this is only like the modern day stuff, right? Like this is only like the stuff we've done in the last like 20, 30 years, right? So that's fine. That's enough, right? So we've created like major refugee camps in all of these sorts of places, right? And we've done that by just dropping bombs on them, or by economic sanctions is another way. And so all of these places now are sending these refugees. Okay, you know what? This is too much. I don't care. ADHD brain had an idea, didn't pan out. Moving forward. We didn't blow them up. We turned them to the gleaming towers of democracy. Yeah. Okay. Okay. National Post suggests replacing all parks with giant statues of John A. MacDonald. I don't really get, like, the right really gets, like, uppity about, like John A. MacDonald, he was an important historical figure in Canada. It's like, he was just, like, the first guy, right? Like, it's like we if somebody does something the first time, it's like suddenly they're holy or sacred. And I'm just like, well, that's stupid. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, no, they're not. And if we found out that John A. MacDonald was like a genocidal maniac, fucking dump this guy. I don't understand this. It's like young people who fall in love with the first person they have sex with, you know, because they were my first, right? But if they end up being like a crack dealer and like they beat you up, fucking get rid of this guy, like, or girl. Downtown Toronto Strip Club hosts low barrier, no surveillance, COVID-19 vaccine clinic. Great. And then Jesus drug tested everyone using taxpayer money before deciding if the lazy freeloading masses were worthy enough to receive fish and bread. Yeah, man. I won't go off on it because I don't have that much time left, but like the idea that evangelical Christians and far-right fascists are the ones who have laid claim to the Bible, that's just a joke. Like, literally read the book once. Like, and not even like the Old Testament. Like, just read like, and not even like all of the New Testament. Like, read John. That's it. Nah, read Matthew. Read Matthew. Do Matthew. Because then you get the Sermon on the Mount. And if you get the Sermon on the Mount, you really realize really quickly that, like, yeah, Jesus is probably not a Republican. Like, probably not. And not a capitalist. Not a capitalist. Like, West Virginia is offering guns if you get a vaccine. Oh, it's like the most American thing I've ever heard. That's like the most American solution. People aren't getting vaccines up in here. Well, offer them a pistol, Clancy. Free pistol with your vaccine. Free pistol with your vaccine. I'll get a vaccine for a pistol. That's a fine pistol. Yeehaw, man. Yeehaw. Hey, you know what, though? If it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. If it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. The poor man's Jordan Peterson. Satanism of Little Nas and WandaVision. Oh, this is Thought Slime? Oh, okay. Thought Slime's great. Thought Slime's great. If you don't know Thought Slime...
Hey, everybody, the new Jordan
great.
Peterson just dropped. Friends, come listen to me. Listen. Today, I'm going to discuss some weirdo on the internet, but do not go bother this man. This is just an old crank. You're not doing any good in the...
I'm going to watch this one later. Because I really like this guy. Oh, here's another one. Cody Johnson, some more news. Cody Johnson, some more news. Pay attention to Cody Johnson, some more news. He's really, really... his videos are really, really good. And what I love about Cody Johnson, like, Thought Slime takes a more, like, ephemeral view, right? He presents himself as being sort of like a guru type almost, which is fine. That's who he is. But Cody Johnson is like, he captures the insanity of what's happening. He really is like insanity manifest. That just like, this is what's happening and it's crazy and we just need to talk about it. Ugh. The socialist fraternal kiss was a special form of greeting between socialist leaders. This is not real. This can't be real. Just get them to kiss. That's what it is. Today is June 4th. In 1989, the Chinese Communist government sent troops to suppress a peaceful demonstration of democracy. It's estimated that 1,000 people were killed. Okay. BC Forest Minister Conroy says the respectful thing to do is log and talk. The respectful thing to do is keep cutting while having the discussions with First Nations. Yeah, I bet the Gits stand don't think it's the respectful thing to do. I'm glad to see that this story is not going away. I'm glad to see that the Fairy Creek story is not going away. If you don't know what's going on at Fairy Creek, they are in Fairy Creek, which is in British Columbia, on Victoria Island. They are logging old-growth forest, and a lot of, and people seem to think that like the forests, forests grow back. What's the problem? And if we just do selective growth and all this kind of stuff, well, the newest data coming out of that area is saying that if you log these old-growth forests, they do not grow back, right? That they are a non-renewable resource, right? So if you've got like an old growth tree that's like 100,000 years old and you log it, yeah, it doesn't grow back. It doesn't come back, right? So you are like, and we are in a period of time where like we need these trees, like we need them. It's not a question of want or desire. And so like literally it's capitalism destroying us on the face of it. And so people are going and protesting like this, not letting trucks through and so on and so forth. And where it becomes extremely concerning is that police will show up and they won't let journalists into the area, right? They won't let journalists into the area. And that's where you step the line into like, oh, so there's some like real crazy fascist shit happening here, for sure. Like, for sure. Huge trees are crucial to the environment. Taking them away would destroy the whole place. Exactly, Nick. That's exactly what it is, right? And like, we are, as we learn more and more about forests, and as we learn more and more about these environments, we are seeing more and more that these ecosystems are linked. That the whole narrative of the logging industry is, oh, we'll do selective logging, but like, okay, that's like saying we'll do selective finger cutting, right? Like we'll do selective limb removal, right? Oh, we'll just take out one of your bones. It's fine. Which bone do you want taken out? Right? And we don't seem to actually think about it as like a whole system that operates in tandem with one another, even though we have like hard evidence that shows that it is a system that operates in tandem with one another. Like a forest, it is more akin to a body. And this idea, this narrative of like, no, they're just a series of individual trees. It's like, yeah, just like your fingers are a series of individuals on your hand, right? Like, which finger do you want to get rid of? You won't miss it. It's fine. And so the Fairy Creek story is in my view, like one of the most important stories going on today. Because and it seems as though it's mainly First Nations people, but it seems like the white population of British Columbia is now starting to be like, well, and what's so infuriating about this is that the British Columbia NDP were voted explicitly to stop this, right? That was one of their promises, was that they were voted to stop this, and they're not, right? They've done that liberal thing where they've like placated and thrown little tokens and all this kind of stuff, but now they're not actually stopping it, and so like. It is literally the people of British Columbia want this to stop, and now they're realizing the only way it's going to stop is if we actually go and stop it. And that's what they're doing. Good for them. And I hope they continue. I hope they're successful. Indigenous women still coerced into sterilization. Senate report. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the systemic racism doesn't exist. Yeah, exactly, Ruth. Like, it's not even the trees; it's all the wildlife that goes with it, and the whole thing is interconnected with itself, right? And we're learning more and more about our environment, and the thing is that like we know like almost nothing, right? Like what we know about our environment and about the natural world. This is the arrogance of capitalism. Like, we think that we can go around and like tear the place out and like let's. I've got 15 minutes left. I'm actually going to delve into this. And it doesn't matter if you believe this is true or not, okay? But I like to speculate on this kind of stuff. Who's to say that the Earth itself is not a sentient creature, right? That the Earth itself doesn't have a form of sentience. That we are living on, like, the capitalist ethos is that, oh no, these are just resources and we can extract them and that'll be totally fine. But like, we don't know anything about this place that we're on. And it could very well be the case that the Earth itself is a sentient creature. And we're just so fucking stupid and disconnected from the natural world that we don't even bother to stop to contemplate that might be the case. And if we continue acting this way, what? You think the Earth is just going to let us? You think it's just going to be totally chill with this? No. And like, what's going to happen is that it's going to be like, oh, you guys want to desertify the place. Okay, we'll desertify the place. And it'll just wipe us fucking out because it's way bigger than we are. And it'll move along with its life, right? Just move along and be like, okay, that was weird. We had an infestation of humans. Get the fucking out of here. And even if you think about it in secular terms, that's what we're doing. Like, if the Earth desertifies, we are fucked, right? Like... And cutting down old growth forests, or like the Amazon rainforest, that's how you do it. Yeah, maybe we need to die in order for the Earth to renew itself. I mean, this is like, humanity is a big experiment, right? Like, we are sort of figuring out whether or not we are sort of asking the question: is there intelligent life on Earth? To be determined. Nursing homes with repeated violations continue to break law despite Ontario's promise to crack down, because Ontario doesn't give, like, Doug Ford doesn't care. All he cares about is privatizing these places so he can get a whole bunch of money. That's it. He wants to do what Mike Harris did, right? Mike Harris sits on the board of directors for long-term care homes that are shitholes, right? and he's making a ton of money doing nothing, while your grandparents and your parents live in these shitholes and are living in despair, right? That's what he wants to do. That's what Ford wants to do. So he's not interested in this. Like, he's not going to do anything about it. Yeah. Capitalism needs to die. Humans are one with nature, not above it. And it's interesting because we often get caught, and maybe we won't come back as tenants of this earth. Yeah, maybe that's for the best. But it's amazing how often you see people talk about nature as if we're not a part of it. I think the greatest example of this I ever saw was Neil deGrasse Tyson said that the universe has no empathy. He did a tweet where he's like, the universe has no empathy. And Norm Macdonald, a comedian, comes back with, well, hold on. Humans are part of the universe, right? And humans have empathy. Therefore, in some small degree, the universe does have empathy. And it was just like this little moment where a stand-up comedian kind of pointed out, hey, why are you excluding humanity from the observation of the universe? Which happens all the time. We're constantly talking about nature and the universe and the environment as if we're not a part of it. And that's what this whole thing is about. It's about us coming to terms with the fact that there are systems that exist in place already that supersede us. To put it in biblical terms, we are being confronted with the laws of God, and realizing that the laws of man do not supersede the laws of God. And if we don't actually pay attention to those laws, then those laws will wipe us out, which is exactly what the path that we're on right now. And we're not stopping. We're not stopping. We'll pretend like we will, so that so that a politician can be a careerist and sit on a board or something. But we're not interested in actually stopping it. Toronto School Board say virtual celebrations, not outdoor grad ceremonies, will go on. Okay. The Matrix sequels are good, actually. Oh, okay, cool. Everyone has an opinion. I have no idea what this has to do with socialism, but whatever. On the other hand, Israel was literally founded of, by, and for socialists, communists, and anarchists. Okay. Stalin's USSR was the first foreign state to ever recognize Israel as an independent sovereign state and nation. Okay. That just sounds like a bunch of nonsense. If we destroy the Earth, we don't deserve to escape to another planet. Yeah, and that whole narrative, that Elon Musk narrative of we'll go to Mars and everything will be so much better and all that. It's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. And for capitalism to do it, it literally would have to destroy its planet in order to even get there. But it's not any different. This desire to get to Mars and that going to Mars is going to solve everything, and Mars, all this kind of stuff. It's no different than evangelical Christians waiting for the rapture. It's the same energy. It's the same idea. It's just this magical idea of a better world after Jesus comes back. Oh, the world will be so much better after we're on Mars, right? It's capturing this American delusion of magic and that Jesus is coming back and that Mars is going to do a thing and all of this, right? It just goes to show you that there is a deep-seated delusion that exists in the American consciousness. And because we have to be delusional. Because if we actually talked about reality, honestly, like talking about reality, I think that there's a lot of people in the United States, they would break. That it would like existentially and psychically destroy if they actually attempted to understand what they have done and what they are doing in any meaningful way. I think it would destroy them. Like, they're not, like, the people of the United States are not strong. They just pretend to be strong. Maybe if the poor and disabled are left here, when the rich go to another planet, we can fix Earth. Oh, yeah, I think that's probably right, Ruth. I think that is what they're actually thinking about, right? That it is an abandonment project, right? Like, it's because if it works, it's only rich people that are going. Like, come on. And, like, it's very similar to the story. Like, why do you think British people won this conflict, right? Why do you think it's white British people that win this project? It's that the UK is shit, right? They logged it. It's a shithole. It's ruled by tyrants and just like evil bastards. And so more people are willing to leave here than are willing to leave here. Like, France was actually kind of nice during that period of time, right? They were trying to do nice things, right? Why? So more more British people left and went here than French people, right? And the same thing is going to happen. That Earth is just going to turn itself into a total shithole. It's not there yet. It's still beautiful. Today was a beautiful day. Well, I feel like we're in the last 5 minutes of this, so I just wanted to let you guys know, okay? Every single one of you, I'm positive, is exhausted and exasperated and tired and absolutely fed up with what's going on in the world. And I just need you to know that you are doing really great. Each and every one of you are doing really, really great. You're making good decisions for yourself. You're making good decisions for the people that are around you. Everybody is... when I was growing up and when I was doing stuff, everybody shit on literally every decision I made. And there are so many times in my life where I wanted to pursue something and I wanted to do something and I didn't. And I look back and I think I should have pursued it. Because even if it was a disaster, it would have been great. And you know what you need to do. You know what you need to do. It's inside of you. You know. Pursue that. What the universe has given you is more powerful than what your math teacher thinks, right? Or like what someone like Jordan Peterson thinks. There's something inside of you. You know it's there. You know it's true. Pursue it. Pursue it honestly and pursue it with all your heart. Because ultimately, you are a divine being standing on divine energy. All of this is quantum material and we are born of it. We don't know why. We don't know what we're doing here. We just know that we are here. And when you dig deep enough, you begin to realize that, oh, I am a quantum creature created by quantum energy that is itself attempting to discover itself. And that the process of its discovery is when I, a quantum being, speak to you, a quantum being. And when you, a quantum being, speak to me. And we create solidarity with one another, and we create an understanding, and we begin to answer that fundamental question of what is this? Why are we here? And asking those fundamental questions are extremely dangerous to the capitalist class. Because if you're asking those questions, then you're not working yourself to death for a capitalist. If you're out there, you haven't liked, you haven't shared, you haven't subscribed, do me a favor, hit it up. I could use it. It'll make you feel good. Leave a comment, too. The YouTube algorithm really loves comments. Okay, guys. I'm going to sign out. Good luck. We're going to need it.